Man, I wish I could come up with a pen name so good it was indistinguishable from a real name.
What, Dan Standing isn't real enough for you?
It might be the standing bit. Dan, nailed it. The verb, though.
That's okay. Originally it was Standing Dan, and I kept getting the order wrong. So,
So you just slapped a comma in there.
Mm-hmm. But anyway. Hello, and welcome to Modern Metamorphoses, the podcast that takes a look at comics, prose, movies, TV shows, and other media involving the physical or mental alteration of its characters or metahuman themes. Striving to be insightful, respectful, and inclusive, this series does at times discuss adult material, but is itself all access. Join us now as we look at how metamorphoses in media have evolved into this, the modern era. And I am this co-host, Dan Standing, the Transformation Comics and Prose writer and creator.
And I am the fantasy fetish researcher and scholar and sole American front in the war on emus, Alex Fort.
And I am Syrus Durham, self-published author of stories involving shrinking women.
Hello, Syrus.
Hello. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're very excited about this. You are one of the many people whom I first met at SciCon 2020 this year.
Oh my God, it was this year.
It was this. Yes, it's still 2020 for those of you who are listening to this in 2021, but it is indeed still 2020. Two individuals whom I met at SciCon, actually. I think we're all met at SciCon, but Cy, you were there in a particularly special manner as well.
Yes, I was. This was my third SciCon, and after, actually right before the second one, Veronica, who's one of the creators, and I were talking about an escape room that I had done locally where I am, that was set in a dollhouse, and that intrigued her, and so then I started planning one for SciCon. So we had oversized props, and the premise was that the characters were shrunk, trying to find another shrunken character, and puzzles were all intertwined with oversized objects that I had constructed myself.
They were very well done, by the way. I have to admit. I did that room and I really enjoyed it because I'd only done like two more escape rooms before that, and like you can tell when they kind of have a pretty good idea, and you can tell when they don't.
Oh, thank you. I'm flattered. I had a great time putting it together, and it was such a pleasure seeing everyone respond to it so positively.
Yay.
I'm still very upset and mad at myself that I wasn't able to do it myself, because I do love escape rooms. But I got to say the props that you had were amazing, and were just fun. I think I helped carry one inside. Yeah, we were just really fantastic. So I think an amazing addition to everything that was really great about SciCon 2020.
It was really good. It's probably the high point of the year.
Oh, thank you.
Or the low point, depending upon how it went. Oh.
Point of view puns.
Speaking of shrinking things, I don't know, transition. Cy, you, as our guest, brought with you a particular film that you wanted to touch on. Do you care to introduce it to our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. This is The Incredible Shrinking Woman, directorial debut of Joel Schumacher, starring Lily Tomlin, released on my 10th birthday.
What?
Oh. I do have to share that is 1981.
Yes.
Because it's going to be important to a few details I want to mention in a minute in regards to its production. But yeah, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, which was a big deal when it came out, actually.
Was it?
What to the point where my parents have talked to me about having gone out to see it, and I have the novelization of the movie somewhere downstairs that was also my mother's.
What?
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't even exist yet.
Well, I didn't exist yet either, which is probably why they, went to the movie in 1981. But I was shortly coming, I will say. Actually, you know what? Hold on. What month was this? I may have been there, and I may have seen it. Just,
It was January.
Not with my eyes. January of 1981. No, not yet. No. Just the gleam.
Sorry. So for those of us who did exist then, and were in our preteen years, a lot of friends of mine actually do remember this from it appearing on cable in the year or so that followed. So it was, pardon the pun, a transformative movie for many of my slightly a few years older than you generation.
I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. Because it was, from what I understand, it was a pretty big deal. And partially, I think, a little bit because of some of the people in this. As you mentioned already, Lily Tomlin is our main character, or the actress who plays the main character, and then a sub-character, and then a third cameo character.
Yeah,
that was kind of Lily Tomlin's thing.
And a fourth that was left on the cutting room floor or excised from a previous script.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh. I was really hoping to find the novelization before the episode and read it, but unfortunately the Transformium is mostly composed of a number of boxes between here and the storage unit, so I couldn't find it. But I'm curious if that character could be in the novelization. I will have to look it up. But for those of the now and here, you may know Lily Tomlin as Frankie from Grace and Frankie on Netflix. She's also the voice of Aunt May from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay, I know that one.
And a generation of people were brought up to her as Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus.
I know that one too.
Yeah. So Lily Tomlin, a very big deal back in 1981, still putting stuff out. The other actor in it who plays her husband is the amazing, maybe he's an asshole, I don't remember or not in real life, but someone who I think is always underappreciated in any film he is in, Charles Grodin, who some people may know as the father from the Beethoven films. He has also recently been in a few things, none that I really know very well offhand. But mostly I, as a kid, knew him as the bad guy from The Great Muppet Caper, which also came out in 1981. 1981 was a big year for films. But yeah, he's the bad guy from The Great Muppet Caper. He was also in King Kong, the remake. You mentioned this is directed by Joel Schumacher, who I know has gotten kind of a bum deal the last few decades because of Batman, but also the director of The Lost Boys, what I think is one of the greatest vampire films. So.
Oh, it's an excellent film.
And I think he does The Incredible Shrinking Woman fairly well. But we can talk more about that later. Before I go on, I've been talking kind of nonstop here. I've got 4 other actors I just want to touch on briefly, but I've been taking up a lot of air in the room here, so I want to give everybody else a moment to say stuff, basically.
No. I have no problem running down the cast first.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only person I really recognized was the Doctor, and what I recognized him from is probably embarrassing to his career.
I don't know if I pulled the Doctor from my list here.
Dr. Nortz is Henry Gibson, who was part of, I believe so. Anyway, let me just double check that. And he was part of, at one point, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
I don't know what that one is.
Yeah, that was a 60s, late 60s, early 70s kind of sketch comedy show.
That sounds
Nick at Night viewing for me.
And Henry Gibson also a few years later was the bad guy in he was the supermarket manager in Inner Space.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't know that one either.
That's
We'll get to inner space eventually.
Dennis Quaid gets shrunk and injected into Martin Short. That's inner space.
Oh, I do know that one. Okay.
It's hard
yeah,
not to know.
Yeah, I know that guy from Biodome.
There you go.
He was the bad guy in The Burbs, I think.
Oh, man.
Oh, I hate The Burbs.
I wish I knew all of these.
Well, these are my teenage years we're talking about here. So.
That's fair. That's fair. I was hoping to throw some shade at a lesser Baldwin.
No Lester Baldwins that I know of in this.
Not in this one.
Not in this one, no. The remaining people I want to call out before we get to the effects here is we've got John Glover, whom is an amazing actor. I think most recently people may know him as Dr. Sivana's father from Shazam, which is a great movie. I love Shazam. And a couple of things. He's really good in this. Then we have Ned Beatty, who is the goofy guy who kind of helps kidnap Lily Tomlin's character.
Is he the boss?
Yeah,
he's his boss. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I only knew him from that one American Sniper movie where he played a really skeevy senator.
Was that Senator
I think
Charles
so.
F.
Yeah.
Meacham? Yeah. He was also the voice of Lotso, Hug and Bear from Toy Story 3.
Oh, did I know him from that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He always plays skeevy dudes. That makes sense.
Yeah, he was pretty good at that.
Then we've got the doctor's assistant, who is Elizabeth Wilson, whom I know and will always know as the psychologist who pretends to be Fester's mother in the Addams Family.
Oh, I thought she looked familiar.
Yeah,
Elizabeth Wilson is also in the movie 9 to 5, which features Lily Tomlin and came out a year earlier.
Is that the one with Dolly Parton?
That's the one with Dolly Parton and Jane Fonda. Yep.
Ah, okay.
And Dabney Coleman playing the smarmy boss guy.
He's pretty good at those.
Yes.
The last actor I want to mention, and he's a particularly important person because we may end up seeing him again in the future, Mr. Fort, is Mark Blankfield, who plays the lab assistant as we get to the end of the film. Not only has he appeared in Splash 2, which is terrible, and we are definitely not going to be revisiting.
Is that like tangential to the Tom Hanks one?
Yes.
What a crime.
It's actually, Splash 2 is not tangential. It is the same characters, just played by other people. It is a sequel recast, where the only holdover from the original movie, I believe, is the woman who played his secretary at the produce company.
Mm-hmm. More importantly, though, I wanted to point out that he plays Jekyll and Hyde in Jekyll and Hyde Together Again, which most people probably don't know as a film so much as a breast expansion scene on YouTube. So at some point we will tackle that film in its entirety, I guess. But Mark Blankfield, which, again, I think pretty much every single movie that I've mentioned people from, Jekyll and Hyde was 82, but pretty much everything came out in 1981 alongside this movie, including an episode, a film that we did earlier in ModMeta, An American Werewolf in London, because Rick Baker is not only also in this movie, but he does the gorilla effects.
Right.
Well, okay. I guess I was like in a bit of like a fugue state when I was watching this movie, because I was like, all these people look really familiar, and I like went to the IMDb and I'm like, okay, let's go for the ones that I'm like not sure about. And then you're like, hey, you should know who this guy is, and then you say it, and I'm like, I do know who this guy is. I watched his face for like 2 hours, and then I watched him decompose for a little bit longer.
Yep. 1981, weirdly important year for transformation films, and The Incredible Shrinking Woman is basically, I think, the nexus of much of this, to be honest.
Wow. Did not realize all that. I was 10. I just saw, movie with like oversized stuff. Well, not undersized person, and that's kind of intriguing. I was not thinking about other such movies at the time, but
Yeah.
that's an intriguing connection.
I
I was
love
impressed.
those moments. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was impressed by like the spider web that comes out of this once I started digging.
How many degrees it killed Kevin Bacon? So
I think 2.
But
statistically, it's 3, but I'm pretty sure one of those people has worked with Kevin Bacon.
I would be shocked if all of them hadn't.
But I was gonna say that I love that moment when like whenever I talk with anybody and it's like, so what happened? Tell me your story. And they like psychoanalyze the movie that like was their awakening, because they're always like 8 or 9. They're like always really young, and they see something that like isn't explicitly sexual. It's not explicitly made for that purpose, and it just they always tell the story the same sort of way, and I like can't help but feel like every person has one of these moments for something, anything. And like I feel like the age range is irrelevant. It's always just that's kind of when we're like really exploring cinema that isn't told to us, right? Because when we're like 4 or 5, like we watch what the parents put on. But between the ages of like 5 and 12, you can start picking your own movies.
Right. I don't remember seeing previews, trailers on TV for this movie, because back then there were really only 3 networks. And but it was when it was on cable, about a year or so later, that I saw the trailers, because they did show trailers between movies on HBO or the movie channel or whatever we had, and this was something I wanted to see.
Like there's always something like I feel like it's not necessarily an awakening as much as like the wool being pulled away, and you're just like, oh, this is cool, and like you're too young to really understand things sexually.
Right.
Like, and not to say that like human beings are asexual when they're younger. It's more so that you don't have the cultural competency to understand what's happening. And so you just like when that moment clicks and then you look back on it, that moment always gets me, and that's like the moment I love talking with people about.
And learning that, I mean, this is loosely based on The Incredible Shrinking Man, Richard Matheson's novel, and then eventually seeing that movie a couple of years later. Yeah, that one didn't do it for me. You know, I mean, I appreciate the philosophical bent of that movie and the effects at the time, but it wasn't a must see the way this one was. So, and it may just be the timing of how old I was when I was alerted to this movie.
It is interesting to just kind of look back and be like, why this one and not why that one, and then you'll never know.
Right.
But it is such a like, oh, all right, well, I guess I like what I like, basically.
The brain is a fascinating organ that is roughly the size of both your fists put together with the fronts of your fingers combined, right? That's the size of your brain on average. And that little piece of jelly will pick and choose the weirdest things to think about.
Yep.
It can contemplate the span of the universe. And we're like, I watched like a Muppets episode, and there was like an Alice in Wonderland one in it, and it really just stuck with me. How old were you? I was like 4.
So I would have seen, I'm really curious. That was Brooke Shields was the guest star, because I mean, I watched the Muppet Show live when it was airing, because that was the 70s. I was a kid. So I'm really curious when she was on the Muppet Show now. And we're probably going to find it was 1981, but
the Transformation Nexus?
No, 1980. 1980.
So close.
It premiered in America October 18th, 1980.
That's so close.
So very close, but I do remember that one. So maybe that, because I saw that when it aired, and maybe that started the seed why I had to see this movie. But trying to figure out, the hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, it always is.
And soon 2020 will be hindsight.
Yes.
Not soon enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, our standpoint as adults, full-grown adults with like our ideas and desires and everything kind of figured out for the most part, definitely like skews our perception of then. But right now, I'm more so thinking about, I want to meet the guy in Hollywood who's just like, we got to get some growing and some shrinking action in all these productions now. Like there was either a writer or a producer or someone just pressuring people, just like, I want to see more of this. We have not had enough of this. Everyone's about this. And then meanwhile, a bunch of kids are just kind of like, this is fascinating.
Basically what you're saying is that somewhere in Hollywood there was the equivalency of, and someone can fill me in on who this was, is that the movie producer who during the like early 2000s wanted the giant tarantula in every single movie, which, you know, Kevin Smith refused to do and eventually got put into Wild Wild West. So the equivalency of that in the like late 70s, early 80s, where it's like, yeah, all right, so you've got your corporate espionage movie, but, you know, when can we see the giant woman, you know, in this?
I bet you the dude took acid and he had one of those like perception, like size change moments, and just kind of like, I love that idea. Let's see how many people we can get to do it creatively.
I gotta share this with everyone.
I gotta share my vision.
Mm-hmm. This script was written by Jane Wagner, who is Lily Tomlin's partner.
Oh, really?
Really. It was written with her in mind because, you know, they were together back then. So she is one of the, I bought on eBay many years ago. It's a revised first draft of the script, and it's by Jane Wagner and Joel Schumacher. And Jane Wagner is indeed Lily Tomlin's partner and has been for many years.
I just clicked on the IMDb, and yes, they've been together for many years and finally married in 2013, which is good. Congrats to them, and I'm glad that that's something they could finally see through.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, well, very cool.
I need to talk to them and see if they're into size change things.
So, and as we go through what happens in this movie, which is at both simple but also unnecessarily complex. Yes. I am going to be very curious because Sai, you're the only one of us who can say that they have some perspective of like watching this as a kid who would have really, I think, almost no concept of 90% of what is going on in this film outside of the size change. And then, you know, now where, you know, I'm certainly looking at it going, oh, you're trying to do a commentary on 1980s suburban, you know, house, consumerism and everything. This is like the combination of, and it's interesting because it's Joel Schumacher, but this is like a combination for me of like 3 different Tim Burton movies all thrown together. Yep. Because I definitely get this like Edward Scissorhands vibe. There's the mixing together of cosmetics vibe that we saw in Batman. And then, I've lost the third one. So let's just say,
isn't it really like the color palettes?
The color palette, I definitely got the vibe of from Edward Scissorhands. Yeah.
Your operative word there, Mr. Standing, was trying.
Yes.
Because I think this movie tries a couple different things, and because it is trying to mesh these together, it doesn't fully work on any of them.
Yeah, I feel like it could have really solidified it by getting a lot of staccato piccolo. Then it would have definitely been some good Tim Burton stuff.
I just love the fact, though, that, you know, in the Simpsons, when they talk about being liminal, subliminal, and superliminal in regards to messaging, like there's literally a superliminal moment in the film where a newscaster states to the camera what I think their attempted thesis of the movie is.
Yep.
And
this is the point.
It's crazy. So let's start from the beginning, though, I think, if we're going to. And, you know, we'll try and work in the usual cause, process, impact moments as we go. I know you, Sai, have a lot of notes.
Yes,
so
I do.
We'll make sure we'll touch on that. And actually, do you want to kind of get us going here on the story? It's also, let me just say, I'm going to interrupt myself introducing you. This film starts out horny. Like,
yeah, it does. It's weird.
Yeah, not only horny, but like the little kids listening in on, are they wondering whether or not their parents are gonna do it.
Oh.
10-year-old me did not know what was going on. And
Is it bad that, like, I thought you were talking about the part in the store when she gets the fake cheese, like, shoved in her mouth? Because that's, like, right in the beginning.
Well, because it opens with over the title sequence, you just hear what is clearly supposed to be someone assuming that there could almost be listening to a porno where somebody's like, this guy to this woman is like, oh, here, get it, put it in your mouth, like really get your mouth around it, and she's like, oh, you got it on my blouse, oh God, and then slowly revealing that this is like a Cheese Whiz knockoff that this guy's trying to hawk outside of a grocery store.
Okay, I see what you mean. I guess my many years familiar with the movie, I know exactly the context of what they're saying in that moment, so I don't interpret it as anything other than she's trying Cheese Whiz. But as a first time viewer or well, I don't know if it's your first time, but as a first time viewer, as a first time adult viewer, I can see that interpretation.
Yeah, it is an interesting way of introducing your film when you're old enough to know what that could be, not knowing what it is.
Can I take a beautiful moment and just say right now that the only benefit of this pandemic is the fact that I'm so happy that we don't have people sitting in front of, like, shopping centers just like, hey, you want to try this thing? I don't wear gloves. Put it in your mouth. It's like, do not talk to me, stay away from me, and if you touch me with those grimy, filthy hands, I will have you arrested. Thank you.
And it's at this moment that we are introduced to Lily Tomlin's put upon suburban housewife. I don't like saying housewife, but that's really what they are. Her name is Pat Kramer, right?
Mm-hmm, yes. And Pat's having what she says her story starts on a perfectly normal day. She's just finished food shopping cart overflowing with bags of groceries. She has her 2 children there, and her housemaid or whatever Concepcion's role is, she helps with the family and the kids.
Yeah, and she's like a live-in, like, helper, assistant.
It's never fully explained what her title is, but I mean, she helps run the household, kind of like Alice in the Brady Bunch, I guess.
Yeah, she just feels exploited to me.
Oh, she is.
Oh, absolutely. In every sense of the word.
Yeah.
But also, what? I mean, I didn't exist in 1981 yet. I was shortly to come, but. Was this like live-in? Again, you mentioned the Brady Bunch. Like, was this live-in house assistant like that common a thing back then? Like, I see this a lot, and I'm like, when, where, what?
I don't know if necessarily Concepcion is a live-in, because there's one scene where her carpool comes to pick her up, and everybody in the carpool comes to the door.
Yeah. So she just must be like a day maid.
Maybe, yes.
Maybe.
But she's often there for as early as breakfast. Or, well, there is a scene late in the movie where she's there for breakfast, but that might make sense because Pat's so small by that point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And as you mentioned, Pat's got this cart full of groceries, so full that she has to tie her like trunk in the classic. Oh crud! What's the car?
Station wagon.
Thank you, the station wagon.
Station wagon.
The classic station wagon with the 2 kids driving through the suburbs.
And the dogs in the car.
This movie is nothing but chaos.
Right, because the dog farts.
It's a visual and oral cacophony. This movie killed me. So from beginning to end, this movie was like almost like a seizure warning. Like, I could not handle how busy it was. And, like, just from the beginning, where it's just like, she has so much stuff. It just filled with anxiety. It's like, oh, we got to get the kids and the dog in the car. It's like, why is the dog in the car? We're in California. And then, like, they're driving, and, like, everyone's yelling. And, like, I'm so glad I just live with one human being. And we just shop for us, and we don't shop for, like, 12 people. In, it's, like, suburban, like, Technicolor dream nightmare. Oh. God, this movie terrified me.
Cacophony is certainly right, and I do. Okay, let me say, like, I think, even again, as you mentioned, Cy, this is Joel Schumacher's like premiere motion, like cinematic motion picture,
right?
And Joel does work with intent, and I 100% believe that his intent, which he succeeds at right now, is to put across the like overwhelming like anxiety and just over like just put uponness that Pat is experiencing at this point, because he's certainly, as Fort just expressed there, like the level of anxiety and cacophony and chaos that she puts up with is palpable to the point where, yes, I was like, please I must escape the scene. What's going on? Like later on in the movie, when we are finally introduced to like the evil organization that's going to use her to conquer the world, I was actually so relieved to be in those scenes with those people, because I'm like, oh, it's quiet.
And dark.
The lights are muted. Yes. Oh, how nice to be here amongst these people. I'm so relieved. But yeah, I think
the control sounds good.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like, again, I want to give Joel Schumacher credit here, is that he is trying to express a woman whose life has gotten completely out of her control, and that is 100% felt by at least me, the viewer.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, there may be some issues with scripts and plot holes and what have you, but I think overall the direction for what this movie is pretty well done. I think Schumacher does do a good job with trying to balance the disparate parts of the plot.
I will say it is effective.
Yes.
I think that's the best adjective I can throw at it.
Yes, that may be a better way to say it. So, thank you, Mr. Ford.
No problem. Like, he was aiming for something and he nailed it, and it nailed me. And I'm still kind of, if I couldn't imagine seeing this in theaters, I feel like I would have to leave.
So through all of this chaos, Pat manages to get home, get the children into the house, despite the fact that they seem to be multiplying with neighbors' children as she's going along. It's kind of the oh man, words are not with me today. What was that game with the little guy that rolls the ball? Katamari Damacy of neighborhood children. And so we are now introduced to the second character that Lily Tomlin plays, right?
Right. That is Judith Beasley, one of her neighbors, who comes in to sell a variety of like beauty products and so on, hairspray, beauty cream, a feminine hygiene spray, and such, and gives her a sample which like glues right onto the counter, because that's where you want your feminine hygiene spray.
Yeah, she just sticks it. She, without asking, just sticks it to the kitchen wall. And this was also, by the way, because this gave me the like AVON like salesperson vibes in this Technicolor suburb. This was the whole like, oh, here's our Edward Scissorhands moment where we have the AVON salesperson equivalency in this monochromatic. It's not monochromatic, but like, Technicolor.
It's the opposite. It's polychromatic.
Yes, thank you. Polychromatic.
It's overchromatic.
Neighborhood.
They have pink cabinets and drawers in their kitchen. It's really
on green walls.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And I think this is where we really do see, and it'll come up later, that like Pat's life is completely dominated by products.
Yes. In fact, prior to her arriving home, when she's driving by all her neighbors, and all her neighbors know her in the neighborhood, and they're like shouting out products at her. Hey, Pat, want to try this? And hey, I got this. Oh, this keeps my boat sparkling clean, and whatever. And Pat's husband works in advertising, so there definitely is this underlying theme of consumerism.
I feel like the entire neighborhood works for, companies and advertising, because the whole thing was like a rolling infomercial. Like, it felt like you could take a tour through that neighborhood and get every single commercial from a 4 a.m. time block in like the mid 90s.
I think if anybody needs to imagine this in a modern standpoint, imagine if Instagram was a street.
Yeah, imagine if like the shopping section of Instagram was a cul-de-sac.
Like every single one of these people is an influencer hawking their most recent sponsored product.
Can I just say though, if somebody leaned out the car window and was just like, "Hey, check out my new wireless Raycon earbuds," I would have died. It felt like it definitely felt like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
In the sense that like it's very surreal. Just like how much stuff they have to fit in the cabinets. It's like, are you shopping for the week, the month, the year? What are you shopping for this much for?
And it's not particularly a big family. I mean, it's
everything's in bags.
Pat and Vance
and
two kids.
At least 2 kids.
Well, maybe they are feeding the whole neighborhood. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm trying to like wrap my head around it because like it definitely like gave me that sinking feeling. But then I like started thinking about it and I was like, there's just too much. But I guess like the whole point is excess.
Right.
Everything lives in excess and like fear as well, because it's like I think this is kind of right around that nebulous era between the 60s and the 80s where like everyone was still like, well, we can't be communist, but we also can't talk about ourselves. You know, we have to be secretive, but we want to have a community. Because like, you know, it's like the fact that she wouldn't talk about the feminine hygiene products. Nobody can see me lean close to the mic, but like, you know, she's trying to be hush hush about it. And maybe it's because there's kids or just because like you can't talk about it. But they're also extremely nosy.
Right.
All the time. And like that becomes ever more apparent later when things actually start happening.
Right.
But yeah, it was, I feel like it was like a caricature of a time that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's definitely trying to make its commentary on pretty much all of that. And, you know, Charles Grodin's character, Vance, the husband, you know, is representative of that in that he, yes, as you mentioned, Si, you know, works for a marketing company. So not that he's not selling a particular product. He's basically hired to sell all the products.
Right.
And the one that he's got, he asks her opinion. I will say, let me also just mention here, like there is certainly a little bit as any couple has. There's some, you know, friction here and there between Pat and Vance, but overall they do seem to be a very well fit and loving couple to each other.
Yes.
Like they are. I was impressed by the fact that there's never a point in this movie. Like I was waiting for the point in this movie where like Pat's small and she knows that she's not satisfying her husband in certain ways, and she starts to get jealous because maybe he throws a look at, you know, Concepcion at some point. Like none of that happens. There's never.
I think he did.
Not in that. I didn't interpret the look in that fashion, and I don't think Pat certainly. That nothing comes of it in that regard.
Right.
Okay. I'll save my little like comment about the feeling fulfilled thing for when she's actually small.
Sure.
We got to get there.
Yeah,
we do got to get there.
Yeah, I've definitely got notes on their relationship there.
And we don't have to spin the wheels too much to get there. Like they have this conversation about a perfume that he's trying, and he spills it on her. And you know, he goes back to his boss and he pitches the name she suggests. Like he's confident enough in her recommendation that she takes this name for this perfume, which is Sex Pot.
Yep.
Back to his bosses who
isn't it caustic? Doesn't it eat her nightgown?
It does. Her blouse dissolves. But it may be a combination of the perfume, and she also mentions something about a detergent to wash it out. I'll just soak it in detergent. So maybe the combination of perfume and detergent is what dissolves the blouse.
I am getting so much anxiety just thinking about it.
You see, I actually interpreted it a different way. I interpreted it as this blouse has gotten all of the chemicals on it throughout the day, that this is our first indicator of something up that it has not,
right,
that it's shrank actually.
Yep.
Oh,
that
that's smart. I like that.
That was my interpretation of
that.
it.
That is one interpretation. When we get to the doctor's office and it's
Mine's the fog.
theorized the list of things that may be the cause of her shrinking. We'll come back to this moment.
Yeah.
See if it lines up.
For me, I thought it was dissolving because they had the fumes come out of it, and she doesn't make fumes when she gets small.
Right.
No, and now that I actually say that theory out loud, the blouse is not a living thing that can be affected in the way that the doctor does talk about later. So I could also be wrong in my interpretation as well.
It's got its cotton DNA.
Well, that's an issue with the cause. What the actual cause is a little ambiguous.
Oh, it's nebulous as hell.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll get to that in one second because we have at this point what I can only say is the introduction of the musical theme of the film. As Vance brings home the next product he's got to pitch, come up with something for, which is Galaxy Glue.
Yep.
Which, Galaxy Glue. Like, it's been a couple days since I watched the movie, and that jingle is still stuck in my head.
That jingle is stuck in my generation's head. There was a time on Facebook that it was like list movies, like 10 days, 10 movies that had an impact on you. Just show a picture and say nothing else. And this was one of the ones I chose, and friends of mine typed in as a comment, Galaxy Glue. Galaxy Glue.
Oh, yeah.
Life will go to pieces without Galaxy Glue.
I mean, it's a catchy song. Somebody hired the right person to do the theme for it. But I think this might be the final addition to the chemical cocktail that Pat has been absorbing throughout her life and what we've seen so far, because I think it's now that she starts to get the sense that she's losing inches, right?
Yep. It's the morning. It appears to be the morning after the glue incident, where everybody gets stuck to the glue, including Concepcion and her entire carpool that came to the door to pick her up.
There's your Kanemari Damacy.
Yeah, and this is a moment for people who enjoy like stuck themes. There is this kind of moment with some of what's going on, but it's for the most part just like a giant critter ball of people slowly like getting stuck to their clean laundry. Like it is an odd moment, but it's there. It's something.
Yep. So it appears the next morning that while Pat's getting everyone breakfast, while Vance and the kids are huddled at the kitchen table, eyes glued on a like little TV at the table, that her bra strap and apron strap slide down her shoulder, and bracelet slides right off her wrist and into Vance's breakfast cereal. And they go to kiss goodbye, and their lips don't meet. And yep, the shrinking has begun.
Yep. And then later on, we see Judith, her neighbor, who, did we mention Judith is the other character played by Lily Tomlin?
Now we have.
Yeah. Judith notices that the garden wall that she used to be able to see Pat over at eye height is now, you can just kind of see the top of her hair,
right,
kind of bopping along. Yep. And it's a slow burn process. There's never a moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, up until the very, very end, we don't really have that like body, like the fabric shifting as she shrinks. It's usually like kind of a crossfade or a cut where it's like the next morning and she's in like just clothing that's slightly larger than it was the night before, right?
There's only the bra strap and apron, and then it seems to span. She goes to the doctor right after that, finds out she's 2 inches shorter. She claims that she was 5'7" since she was 19, but now she's 5'5", and then we see her walk by the garden wall, as you said, and then it cuts to a night, and not sure how many days have passed in this, but there's a scene where she is standing against a wall in her bedroom wearing her bathrobe, and she makes a mark on the wall, and there's a series of marks. So it looks like, I guess the inference is she's measured herself every night. There seems to be about 5 marks on the wall. They're all about an inch apart. So it seems to be a gradual thing. at this point. And the bathrobe and her slippers are clearly oversized on her. And it is an effective moment, I think.
Yeah, I would say so. I was curious if she'd never seen a doctor before, because like the doctor had records, but the doctor didn't look at her records. But I can also see like if you go to the doctor every year, they don't look at your height.
Right. And it's not like the doctor can remember the height of all of his patients. So
that's for me, it almost sounds like I go to the doctor a lot. So like they sit there and they like take my weight, but they also like have my file ready. And when I'm like, hey, I want to come see you for an appointment, and they're like, sure, what's up? I don't just like, well, I'll see you. It's like, oh, I'm losing height, and they're like, okay, and I feel like, but that's not important. I'm nitpicking on a grand sea of things.
But here's my issue with that night scene. So she's shrunk, looks like about 5 inches now. She doesn't seem, though, even though she's obviously in a bathrobe that's bigger on her, she doesn't seem correctly shorter compared to Vance when she eventually goes and hugs him. It seems like he would still kiss her forehead like he had a couple mornings earlier at breakfast.
There's definitely a moment, I don't remember if it's at this point or later in the film, but there's definitely a moment though where he goes to kiss her and like is accustomed to kissing her on a particular place on her head and realizes that they're not aligned anymore. Yeah. I don't know.
That's before the bathrobe. That is the same morning that her bra strap and her apron strap slide off. That's the final because the bra and the apron sliding off. The question is she losing weight? But it's the kiss, like literally seconds later, that spawns her to go to the doctor.
Ah, okay. And it's after the doctor's office where they're in the car and she's kind of understandably freaking out a little bit.
No. She visits the doctor a second time and they send her to the Kleinman Institute.
Oh, yeah.
Study of unexplained phenomenon. And we get this testing montage. Tests, more tests.
Mm-hmm.
The car scene is as they leave there.
And Sai, I just because I think I talked over you for a moment, and I think it's important to impress this is the first moment where I think the movie starts to go in a different direction than some of these could. Could you just repeat for me the name of the clinic again?
Sure. The Kleinman Institute for the Study of Unexplained Phenomena.
A totally real medical facility.
Yes. And the scene that you're referencing when they go to the car and they're walking out of the building, there's 3 people in like white hazmat suits carrying this like refrigerator box that says danger. And someone is inside it shrieking, and you see like their hand outside, like through a hole in the box. And it's like, what's that?
Yeah, for a moment, it does feel like it has become the Great Muppet Caper. Like, the Kleinman Institute is such a ridiculous thing, and we do need to touch on this is where they sort of half-ass explain what they. It's more the theme of the movie than it is the cause of the transformation, I would say. But
I have the full list of ingredients. You want it?
Oh, hang on, if I may. Do you have the list of the tests that they ran?
Oh, no, I don't have the list of the tests.
Hold on, wait.
Do you have a jingle ready?
Fort complains about science.
I knew it was coming. I was going to like, I'll just keep it in. I'll keep it in. They're talking. Okay, I got to talk about it. You don't use electron microscopes on living tissue because it kills it. Okay, next.
Oh, yeah. I was debating in my copious notes of the film if I would do the list of tests, but I was like, I don't know if I can spell some of these.
You don't use chromatography on things that are like that organic. There's too many compounds. Go on.
But I do have the full list of what they think is the reason that she is shrinking. Although what's funny is they burst into the office and say, "We've got it," and then the female doctor, Dr. Ruth,
asks my baby, please.
Asks if Pat is anemic, and Vance throws this hissy fit. You run all those tests and you don't know if she's anemic.
Yeah. This is absolutely, again, because you said it's Elizabeth Wilson, who was the actress from the Addams Family, who's playing Dr. Ruth. Then there's Dr. Eugene Nort, so it's Henry Gibson. Right. And this is the moment in the film where I'm like, did I stumble into like History of the World Part 1 right now? Like, what is happening right here?
It gets musical.
Yeah.
Yes, when Dr. Nortz like lists all the factors that may be contributing to her shrinking, it does sound musical, and I have this list here. So if you'll indulge me for a moment.
Gladly, anything to take my
Please.
mind off of it.
Okay, it's a combination of tap water, flu shot, perfume, glue, solvent, your bubble bath, talcum powder, shampoo, hair conditioner, setting lotion, hand lotion, mouthwash, hairspray, breath spray, feminine hygiene spray, deodorant, toothpaste, detergent, eye drops, nose drops, hair coloring, diet soda, birth control pills, and smog set off by an imbalance already present in your system.
We didn't start the fire. It was always...
And then Pat is distressed because she and Vance helped name half those products.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is also, by the way, my Batman moment where it's like, these are all the products that the Joker has poisoned, and if you wear any combination of them, you'll die with a rictus grin. Like,
Or
this was that moment.
Poison Ivy.
What?
Didn't Poison Ivy, like in the Joel Schumacher movie, just fall into like a vat of chemicals and like come out pretty?
Also, yes, she was pushed over by, oh my God, who played Dr. Woodrow? Because that might be...
Is it that
John
German
Glover
guy,
also.
Stormare, or no?
No,
it's some other dude.
Hold on. How
yeah,
many?
you Google that.
Yeah, I'm going to look up that. But, I can just go to Joel Schumacher's IMDb page that I have open and look it up because that's Batman and Robin.
Right.
Anyway, but that was like my 1989 Batman moment where I was just like, it is John Glover.
John Glover again?
It's John Glover again. He plays Dr. Woodrow in
Wow.
Batman and Robin, who's the one who transforms Pamela Isley into Poison Ivy in Batman and Robin. So
Wow.
we got a double dip in Joel Schumacher movies here from John Glover.
Wow.
So if it's this list of items, all of them together, going back to the disappearing blouse, some of these things would never have gotten on that blouse. So it makes me think that it's the perfume that is the catalyst for the. So I'm confused on what actually causes her shrinking.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in your list you had feminine hygiene spray, and I remembered I wanted to put a PSA out there to everyone. Two things. One, did you know that bleach was invented to, like Lysol was invented as like a douche, like a cleaning douche? And that's a horrible idea. But also, furthermore, you shouldn't be doing like that. You shouldn't have any feminine hygiene spray or douching or anything like that because it throws off your bacterial life, your flora in there, and can lead to yeast infections and other chronic problems. So just water, a little bit of soap. Don't dig in there. It self-medicates. It's fine. Unless there's an actual problem, then go see a doctor. Don't use sprays. It's bad for you. Now we can resume.
Well, I also want to mention, as we've literally had our first COVID vaccine in America yesterday, the flu shot edition, I also was like, no, do not list vaccines as the potential cause of shrinking. Like, stupid film.
Yeah. What the hell, Joel?
Yeah, Joel. But yeah, I think you're right in that my initial impression is certainly that of there being some sort of foreshadowing in this film is not correct. It is indeed I think it just dissolved away from the perfume, because as we've sort of touched on, this is a film that certainly has the message it wants to be telling, and at one point flat out says it to us, but on the other hand doesn't seem to know quite how to get that across in the film and storytelling itself.
I'd have to agree, because I mean, just from that list, it definitely implies, over dependence on products, over excess consumerism, some things that we've just stated aren't necessary. And I mean, to throw smog in there too, so let's get a slight environmental message. Bad environment causes shrinking.
It's the cheese.
It's definitely the cheese.
For me, it's the cheese.
I do want to, though, put up a little bit of a defense here because I grew up in the 80s, and I remember all of these movies. You know, we mentioned The Burbs earlier, like all of these films that are all like the suburbs are bad, the people who are living in it are like over-consumering, blah, blah, blah. And I realize there's a whole socioeconomic opinion thing there that I am not about to get into, but I do feel like if the thing about this film, and this struck me, is that there are no character arcs. Not a single person outside of maybe Ned Beatty's boss character who just lets himself get arrested at the end because he doesn't want to end up being used to capture her a second time. Pretty much no character in this film has a foible that any action in this film addresses and helps them grow beyond, and then leaves them as a different person at the end of the film. I feel like if Pat was somebody who was actively obsessed with like, oh, I want to buy all of your quote unquote Avon products. I have a glut of them that I don't use. Look at all of this canned, like fancy new food that I've been buying, but we don't use it fast enough, and like half of it expires before we do it. Like if there was some indication that she's being wasteful in her consumerism, and this happens to her, then maybe I could see it as like a character arc building sort of thing. But from what I can tell, this is a woman who's on a budget and purchasing food that she and items that she needs to run this household. Like I feel like this film is being unnecessarily mean to a character that I don't feel like has done anything to deserve the over the top commentary on suburban housewife living.
I feel like it's her neighbors who learn more, but we never really see it.
Right.
Yeah. Because they start off with, I love my boat spray. And then, end up, I don't know if they still love it or not. You know what? Scratch that. It's done.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right that only the Ned Beatty character does affect a change. And maybe Rob, the guy who works, the guy who works with the gorillas at the end, he has a slight change, but he's only in 20 minutes of the movie. So.
Yeah. I think any number of parts of the film that I'm going to complain about, and again, I don't think it's a bad movie, but I think even if it was like with the kids start the movie screaming, they scream through the entire film, they scream at the end of the film. Like if there was at least a little bit of work with them where it's like, oh, we're irresponsible suburban children, scream, want, and like as she shrinks, there was some sort of like, oh man, we thought this was fun at first, but we almost killed our mom doing this thing. We've got to kind of be more responsible. You see them like actually like getting the neighborhood children a little bit under control, like anything, something to show like an arc of what they're trying to do here. Like,
yeah, there wasn't like a scream at the sky moment, as I want to call it. Like there was no like snap, there was no anything. Things just kind of kept happening and kept getting worse, and nobody really did anything different. Like I think the only person who really tried was the husband, because like she starts shrinking, and like there's like I hate the voiceover like narration because it just feels so canned. But like she's like, I'm too small to really take care of things, and he has like a book of like how to handle a sexless marriage.
Yep.
Which, if I may, I think we went to a whole convention where people have lots of fun ideas you can do with tiny people, and so I think that guy just lacks imagination. But like he's like trying to like cope, but he doesn't really change because he still goes to work and he like knows the answer, and he still like is a bit of a spineless bastard.
I'm going to partially agree, partially disagree. I mean, there with the sex bit, he does read the book Marriage Without Sex, and I mean, I think he does have a little bit of I don't want to necessarily say imagination, but I think they've tried. There are a couple moments in the movie where it implies that they explored a little bit, but household duties, he does nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything to help.
Concepcion doesn't even help.
Yeah.
Right. Well, she does do some vacuuming. There is a scene later in the movie where we do see her vacuuming,
She certainly likes to shove stuff down the trash disposal. And I will say I want to give Vance one little bit of credit. Yes, he doesn't help around the house, and that's shitty, regardless of how big or small Pat is. But he does, he is flat out told by his boss, like, don't let her go on TV and and tell people why she's shrinking. And you don't ever actually see him confront her to pass that message on one way or another. Like, it is like, I feel like Vance was allowing her to make that decision on her own, which I will give him that credit to. Like, he right. wasn't like stepping in and telling her what to do. Like, he there's not a point where he tries to control her despite her size.
Right.
Yeah, they just are very placid about it. Yeah. Just very like, well, that's going to happen.
And along those lines, Dan, later in the movie when, even though it's a ruse that John Glover's character poses as president of a toy company that wants to make a doll out of her, Vance offers his argument saying we need the money, but he still leaves it up to Pat.
Right, exactly. So I want to credit him for that at least. And again, like I said in the beginning, I do feel like this is a couple who tries to have an equal partnership, at least in the opinions of the matter, if not necessarily the house chores.
Right.
But so we've kind of caught up with where I mentioned where they're in the car. Yeah. And he's like, no matter what, so long as you're wearing this ring, you'll be, I'll watch out and take care of and help you. And of course, she shrinks and the ring falls off.
Well, I don't know necessarily if she shrinks at that moment, but the ring definitely falls off. Maybe it's just the angle. And that scene is lifted from the Incredible Shrinking Man movie. It's almost word for word.
It's such dramatic timing. It made me laugh.
Yeah.
It's like this should be like, like an anchor hitting the sea, but it's like as long as that stays on, then nothing will go wrong. It was like a Futurama joke. Like they literally delivered the punchline.
But I will say from a production standpoint, as they're going down the stairs and into the car, the costume that she's in is noticeably oversized on her. Her hands are swallowed by the sleeves. The skirt definitely it hangs somewhere between her knees and ankles, like closer to her ankles, but it looks like it's a few sizes too big. They do a pretty good job to get that she is smaller at that point.
Yeah, and I don't want to let any of my grousing overshadow the grousing about maybe some plot and character stuff overshadow what I think is technically done a very good exploration as she gradually gets smaller and smaller, and then eventually we'll get the miniature the props of her in her miniature lifestyle. I think all of this is actually very well realized. And it reminds me of what is that? It might be a YouTube channel that recuts comedies as horror or thriller trailers. If you took out some of the music and certainly the voiceover or the narration and put in some when she's measuring herself at the door and she turns and you can see that there's 5 hash marks down and there was this little drum hit almost you could very easily turn this into a very different film with just a little bit of Foley work and some different soundtrack.
Well, actually, it's this moment here as they are leaving the Kleinman Institute for Unexplained Phenomenon that there is a kind of an ominous music because you've got Dr. Nortz and some other shady guy kind of from a balcony of the Institute kind of looking down, and they make shady eyes at each other, kind of to imply, start watching her.
Mm-hmm. The guy from the Illuminati?
Yes.
And I think at this point, we basically have what's the equivalent of an extended montage of her, of her getting smaller and dealing with, different life tasks as she gets smaller and smaller feet by feet or foot by foot.
Yep. Yeah, at this point we have, so some time has passed, not sure how much, and Dan and Vance and Pat are in the living room, and Vance is trying to convince them, don't blow any whistles because we don't know what products, we'd lose lots of money, we'd panic people, and let's just wait till the antidote and then we'll do it. And they each toast to the antidote, and Pat's in the chair. The fact that they built, it's clearly a built set piece. It's 1980. There's no CGI effects or anything. They built this chair for this 3-second shot, and it looks fantastic. And then she goes to the supermarket, and then Judith is teaching her how to drive, even though she can't see over the dashboard.
And let's not skip over this supermarket visit where she is where no small person is supposed to be, in the front of the the grocery cart, with her like legs like lolling over the front of it. Like it is for somebody who clearly at this point doesn't want to draw attention to herself. She has chosen the most attention grabbing way to be in a shopping cart.
Yes.
As they're going through the store.
Yeah, I do have to admit one thing that I did really love about this movie is that, much like with like a Devil Doll, which we covered 2 weeks ago, so unfortunately you didn't get to hear about it, Cyrus.
Oh,
wow. They did the sets in this one. They must have bought a lot of that ugly paint, because like it was really, really well done. Like it didn't seem like they never did a lot of like, what's the word? Composition shots where they put both the big and the small in the same area at the same time. But they did a really good job of like matching the sets and matching all the props and all these things. So that way, like when you look down and she looks small, everything else looks really big, and it's proportional and it works. They got the lighting right. They got everything else right. So like, seeing her like walk around, it's kind of like the Honey, I Shrunk a Kids thing, where it's like, you can tell it's kind of like comically, like the materials are different. Like eggshells don't have that consistency, but it worked.
Yep.
I would say it's weird, as you mentioned, there aren't really any composite shots with little Pat and like a larger human being, which is really strange for me, because there's lots of composite shots of Lily Tomlin as Pat talking to Lily Tomlin as Judith. Like, this is something that Joel and his production team are doing. They just don't ever appear to do it, as far as I can recall, with the shrunken character and a full-size character.
There is one scene when she's making dinner. She's probably somewhere between 30 and 36 inches tall, where she's on the counter and she says, "I'm determined to do all this myself." Nobody's helping her, but she's like straining the pasta, getting the plates out of the upper cabinet. And there is a wide shot of the kitchen. And and Judith and Concepcion are in the shot. They're kind of on the right side of the screen, with Pat on the counter on the left side. And it's clearly Judith, and because you can see Judith's face. So it is Lily Tomlin in both places. Judith and Concepcion are either in front of a green screen or superimposed on the main shot of some sort. You can see the effect there. But that's the only real time that I know that there's the big and small in the same scene like that. Well, the two Lily Tomlins that way.
Yeah, that's right. I do recall that. And it's fine. But yeah, the miniature work, or I don't ever know what to call it. The oversized props, I think, for the most part, are very convincing.
Yeah, the overall production
would
design
it be like Maximature?
Maximature, yeah. Exactly.
Production elements really were phenomenal, and all the way down. I mean, she's wearing her like Frankenstein kind of shoes there and it's a deleted clip or whatever. Maybe it's in the script that I have, where Vance, this is one point where he is trying to help. He's like gluing soles of like flip-flops together to give her that extra height. That was written into the script, but not in the finished movie, to like show that he does actually do some stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, the giant platform shoes that she's kind of bopping around in at one point. It does look like 100% looks like it's a number of like those old foam flip-flops all is glued together. So yeah, I can. That's interesting that came across without even knowing that scene existed.
Yeah.
And as she continues to shrink, we see all sorts of settings. Like she's in the kid's bedroom at one point and gets shoved into the closet by a robot and like goes through this weird nightmare sequence of all the toys.
Yep.
Just dudes in suits.
Yeah, they are.
Dudes in suits being rude. And like, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just more commentary on all the useless stuff that people stockpile when they're kids and like throw away in a closet. But man, that doll that peed a lot.
Oh, the peeing doll was so weird. But it's a thing. Like I've seen those dolls.
It is a thing.
I wish they weren't that aggressive.
Is it peeing a lot, or does it just look like a lot because she's so small?
Dude, the pressure.
Oh, okay. Good point.
Yeah, that was not a dribble. That was a lot, and that was deliberate. I'm calling that producer. I know something's up.
You went on to work on I Hope I Shrunk My Teacher, didn't you? Yes.
Change your name, move to Germany.
That podcast of yours I listened to. So.
Oh no.
And she also is I mean, in between those, she goes on the Mike Douglas show, and
he was a real person. Like
he was a real person. Yep. Okay. He was playing himself, and he had an afternoon talk show like that, and there's a scene right before she goes on the stage where Vance is, and we've referenced this scene already, where Vance is where Dan Ned Beatty is telling Charles Grodin, don't have her blow the whistle. And right as that scene starts, we see Judith run into the dressing room. And when we see Judith again coming back into the audience, she is missing a sleeve on her shirt that she has used to make Pat's dress, because a deleted scene is that in the dressing room, Pat goes through a shrinking spurt and no longer fits in whatever she was intending to wear.
Huh.
Oh,
and I never noticed this stuff.
all the pieces are there. Her dress that she is wearing is just this long tube dress that's kind of like tied up and held around her waist, matches the missing sleeve of Judith. And when she comes out on the Mike Douglas show, Mike Douglas says, and now our guest, Pat Kramer, the incredible shrinking woman. The spotlight pans to where she'd enter, and it misses her because she's shorter. The spotlight has to pan down. So there's a scene that I would love to see. But it begs the question about this process, because up until this point, it implies that it's gradual, maybe like an inch or so a day. And in this moment, if she required such a drastic costume change, then she must have lost like 6 inches or so in one shot. So I'm confused by this process.
Yeah, it seems to be more of a matter of narrative convenience than any actual like formulaic calculable rate.
Right.
Yeah. The only in-universe cause I can think of that would be doing this, but it also kind of goes against like what one might do if they found out that this is happening to them, is it's possible, if we're going to be, if I'm going to be apologist for it, it might be that as she encounters, maybe it's somebody's perfume or somebody washed their clothing and something, like if her body comes in contact with like one of the chemicals that started all of this, it could be that she absorbs a little bit of it and it kind of gives it a momentary kick in the process.
That would make sense.
Or stress, maybe. Could be
stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they don't talk about stress.
Right. Or it's just a very heavy smog day. Like, what is the air quality for the days, between we go through? That is one of the advantages, I would say, of them giving basically everything in the kitchen sink as a possible reason where you can be like, oh, well, it was just, she smelled somebody's perfume and that interacted and, shrank her another inch or two backstage. Like
she touched something backstage. Some of the prop people were spraying down something and the fumes got her, whatever.
I had never thought of that. And really in full disclosure, the only type of viewer that would like be wondering, well, why was it gradual and now it's more like spurts is, I don't know, a size writer who thinks about this stuff.
Yeah, people who analyze cause, process, and impact.
Yep.
We're both the worst and the best people to be looking at it because we will both tear it apart, but then also try and problem solve what it could be.
Right. Because if let's pause it for a second, that this was a real occurrence that someone could start shrinking, it would be, maybe not the same percentage every day, but it would be something gradual. It wouldn't be, hey, in a span of 5 minutes, you lose 6 inches.
Wasn't it sometimes accompanied by a sound effect, or was that just in my head?
Oh, there were several times that her shrinking was accompanied by a musical effect.
Okay, all right. Just making sure I didn't make that up.
Nope, you did not.
Was there something did it strike you guys as weird of just kind of hey, I brought this present to this talk show. It's oh, is it for me? It's haha, no, it's for me. What a douche move. Just bring a box.
True.
Well, it is near Christmas, so maybe this just happened to be a prop that was off stage.
Yeah.
Because she does say Happy Holidays at the end of the thing, but this is actually from the size writer perspective, or the size fan perspective. This moment where she gets into the chair using the box is a wonderful moment.
Yeah, that's probably the most compositing, I think. Yeah, because it had in the foreground, the blurry foreground, it had old dude's face, or head rather, and then her getting up on the chair.
Yeah, the scene on the talk show is done really well, and it really accentuates her size. I estimate her to be, just based on her head is about the height of the chair seat. She's about 18 to 24 inches at this point.
And I think, a lot of stuff goes towards making this scene as good as it does, because you mentioned earlier where she's in this full-size chair that they built, but you only ever really see her in this chair. And I don't even remember noticing it in earlier scenes to even know, okay, well, how big was she the last time she sat in this? In this scene, we have these chairs, they're all the same size. Mr. Dated the Movie Instantly is sitting in one of them, so you have a sense of scale. I'm sorry, this movie is actually the one that made me think, every time I've watched the film in my time where it's he's been, the such and such on whatever news channel has been playing themselves in this. I'm oh man, every single film that I saw is a that does this in 10 years, it's going to be instantly, just as dated as me going, man, I don't even know who this guy is. But regardless, he's in one of these chairs. We can see very clearly what a full-size person looks like seated in them. She, again, it's a wonderful prop work where she carries out the box. I love any scene where you have to see how the shrunken individual has to navigate, the full-size world. So climbs up, gets on it. It is a very, it's a great display of basically the impact of living at that scale.
Yes. And meanwhile, watching the show, you have the Organization of World Management, the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be an acronym for something, and I'm all I get is OWAM. Yeah. I'm I don't think that's a thing. I feel like that's a dropped ball.
And they're a weird assortment of people. You've got John Glover there sipping milk. He's drinking milk, and you've got biker guy because I don't know his name, the one who rides the bike around wearing his tracksuit, and you've got the other two playing backgammon. And it's an odd collection of villains.
It is an odd scene that I can only think is almost it's the group from Thank You for Smoking, the Merchants of Death group. But again, this is the scene where for a few moments there wasn't screaming children, and I was can I spend some time with you guys? What's going on here? What do you guys do? What? Can you be the movie now for a little bit to give me some breathing room? They're so blasé about their plans to conquer the earth, essentially.
Yep.
That's why I call them the Illuminati, with emphasis on the not, because they're behind what do they call the Order of World No, something like the
Organization for World Management.
World Management. And it's like, I love it because they absolutely reek of like secret society, but they're like the Templars. Like they're the most open-faced secret society. You know, everyone knows. They make public appearances. They defend themselves on TV. Like, could you imagine if the Illuminati's like, oh no, that's not us.
Yeah. It takes itself so straight and seriously for what is, yes, essentially like chaos from Get Smart. If everybody was just like, oh yeah, here's our PR person for our evil world conquering organization. Yep. Like, but they're not, it's a weird part of the film for a movie that has such cartoonish moments. Like, this aspect of it is played so straight that it's pretty brilliant, honestly.
The room with all the monitors and the microphones and just sitting in these big sleek chick couches playing ping pong.
The way they're behaving is brilliant. I agree, but their plan is not, because in comes Dr. Nortz and Dr. Ruth, who are in cahoots with them, and he's like, okay, he's going full on megalomaniacal here because you know what Einstein did for space and time, I Nortz will do for size and shape. And he has this plan to shrink the world where he wants to make a serum using Pat Kramer's blood. So
Which is such a limited supply and getting less.
But wait, okay, so they come up with these elaborate plans to kidnap her. Dr. Nortz is her doctor. All he has to do is call her up and say, Pat, can you come in for some tests?
Ones that we totally do on living people.
I need to draw some blood. I think I've got something. That's the ruse. It's just, I think I got something that works. Let's try it. Oops, it doesn't work. Ha ha, but I have your blood now. I can make my shrink serum.
Yeah. I mean, I'm shocked that he doesn't already have it. Like, what tests did he run that
he ran out of blood while she was big?
Blood?
I didn't even think about that. I was just so stuck on just like the order of events that I didn't even think about the fact of like he could just call her and be like, "Hey, are you anemic?"
I need to check again.
We never really answered that anemic question. Why don't you roll back in here? Like, no. Instead, they push Dan, Vance's boss, into like service of getting her, and he doesn't want to do it. Like,
right.
Dan kind of tries to sneak out of the room, and they get him, and there's definitely that moment of like, well, if I don't do what you say, who knows what you could do to me? But I really feel like this is the kind of organization who's like, oh, you don't want to do what, we say we're going to do? Fine. And then you just see them like throwing them into a dumpster and like walking away. Like that's the extent to which they would actually like really like retribute against him.
Yeah. Their vengeance seems really tame. I don't think I saw a single gun in this movie.
Oh, until the Keystone Cops come in later in the movie.
Oh, right. There are cops.
And then there are lots of guns.
Lots of security guards.
Lots of cops. Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of press Dan into being the one who's going to kidnap her again, instead of the physician she willingly brought herself to earlier and is awaiting a phone call from, I presume.
Speaking of unexplained phenomenon.
And he comes up with this plan to have her model, basically be a model, which is 100% something that I've played with in some of the comics I've done, where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, great minds. Wait, you're the bad guy. And for some reason, John Glover's character shows up for dinner with them to discuss it. Like his presence is irrelevant. They're not going to. She's not going to leave with them immediately.
Right.
Like why is he there?
But it is again talking about impact and how the shrunken protagonist is dealing with her new surreal environment. The dinner scene is really well rendered with her on the table, although as the size enthusiast I'm in, I want more of this. I want more of the day-to-day life that she's going through. How did she get up on that table? Because she has the little doll table on the dining room table. Did she climb up? Did Vance lift her up? How'd she get up there? I'm curious. But she's now at Barbie doll size, wearing Barbie doll clothes. Some great costuming. The dress that she's wearing in at the dinner scene is quite elegant. Good Barbie doll clothes.
I believe, and I just pointed out because I love the alliteration of it. I believe the in-universe brand of doll that she is wearing is Sister Stacy.
Wait, I have it written down somewhere. I think Superstar Sissy.
Oh, geez, where did I get Sister Stacy from? Superstar Sissy is better. At least I got the alliteration right.
Yep. And the Ken equivalent is named Stan.
Of course. And as you mentioned, she is having dinner on her own little plate at her own little table atop the table.
Yep.
And they've all been, I guess they just broke out the champagne for whatever reason because everybody seems to be a little tipsy.
Yep.
And Vance is continually trying to pour her this Bug's Life style droplet of champagne into her thimble that she's drinking out of, and just keeps pouring the champagne over her entire body.
Yep. I'm really just, again, the production elements for moments like this are really, really strong. And I mean, even when she's sitting at her table on the table and the other three are in the background, it's probably a rear projection or something like that. It's practically seamless. It holds up really well 40 years later.
I do think outside of perhaps the talk show scene, it is one of the standout size moments of the film.
This whole evening into the next morning is hands down my favorite sequence in the entire movie. With the exception of, and it's nothing against John Glover because he's fantastic, with the exception of the reason for the dinner. Just the slice of life and her predicament, because she gets totally sloshed, literally and figuratively, by the champagne, and opens up the fortune cookie with the great fortune, you will meet a tall stranger.
And I was gonna say, we mentioned earlier that this is also with this whole you should come be a little model for us, et cetera, et cetera. This is also the back and forth after Dan and again, we'll just call him John Glover because I don't remember what his character's name is. After they leave, and Vance is like, you really should, take it. We have all these weird, again, we're paying this doctor that didn't call us for any reason anytime recently. We have all these bills stacking up, and Pat's like, no, I don't want to do it. And, Vance is annoyed. Again, it's okay to be, annoyed and angry. He's expressing his feelings responsibly, even though he's also a little drunk. But, he's like, well, if you don't want to do that, then I guess you don't want this or something. This starts a little manipulative, but he puts down this present that he had gotten for her.
Yep.
Yeah, it was very, very guilt trippy.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But when she opens up the present and see that it's doll lingerie for her, and she smiles and she laughs. She sees, hey, Vance wants me. And so it's the sequence that's next that is really, really powerful, because she goes to the bedroom, and great wide shot of her pushing open the bedroom door, and there on the carpet, wanting to go be intimate with her husband. And there are points in the movie where, as we said earlier, that all the folks at SizeCon could definitely come up with imaginative things for this size difference relationship to explore. I think they have, because there's a scene earlier in the movie where they're in bed together and he feels around but can't find her, and I'm down here, honey, under the covers somewhere. He reads the Marriage Without Sex book, and in the scene where Vance and Dan are talking backstage at Mike Douglas, and he says at the Mike Douglas show, Vance goes saying she showers in the sink. We have to help her up the stairs. She was holding a piece of toast. I thought it was her purse. And don't even ask about our sex life. He actually brings that up, which implies that maybe they have been trying.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more interesting to me, not just as, okay, a size enthusiast who goes to SizeCon, but as the day-to-day life. How would you live in your marriage, and how would it affect you? I am far more interested in that than, hey, let's try to pretend we're a toy company to kidnap her. And not that I have anything so much against the plot idea of kidnapping her, because there's some fun stuff that comes, but the day-to-day impact I'm really curious about.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a much more compelling story than what we got.
Yes.
And we almost get a little bit of it here and there, because I don't remember if this. Oh, no, it has to have happened earlier in the film, because the next morning is the kidnapping. But we do see her like living in the superstar's, whatever her name was, Sissy superstar Sissy dollhouse, which is it was an older style like metal, like cast metal dollhouse that kind of opens up with plastic solid furniture inside. Like we see her in there earlier, and she'll revisit it shortly after the comedy of errors that's about to unfurl for her. But we do see her in there. There's the stand doll, like she's, the house shakes and because her kids want her to come out to like take pictures. Like there are touches of this throughout the movie. But then again, we end up like these weird side plots of this organization that wants to use her blood to shrink everybody on Earth down, or to weaponize it. So it's a pity that some of these things, like the scene where Judith has to rip off her sleeve to give her a new dress, like that. This is the stuff that wasn't fleshed out for this other weirder idea that's been introduced to the plot.
Right. Because, I mean, the scene where she climbs up onto the bed and the music starts off kind of romantic, and then she looks up at the bed and the tone of the music changes because there's an overhead shot of her looking up at how high it is, and she like shakes her head like, oh no, but she's determined. She climbs the bed. The music builds to something more to reflect her determination. She walks across the mattress, past the marriage without sex book. Again, great props. She is clearly about a foot tall on this bed by this book. It's really there. And she climbs onto the pillow. It's really there. And then Vance rolls over and she launches off into the air, lands on the skateboard. That's gotta hurt. Just that whole trajectory.
Yeah. And then she goes all the way back to the house.
Right.
Just undoing hours of progress.
Right. And the big question is, I mean, she started this before she came into the bedroom. Vance left her on the kitchen table. So she had to dry herself off because she's doused in champagne, get into the nightgown he bought, climb down the table. I want to know what accommodations they've made throughout the house to allow her to get places, and they're not showing this. And maybe it's because it's not an exciting movie, but I want to know this, because this would be far more interesting, as we've said, than some of the goofy take over the world plot.
Yeah, they just had to make it like a plot about just silly world domination because it was effective on its own.
Yeah. And the next morning, so she resolves herself, I can't go back there. It's too hard, and I'm just going to get launched off the bed again. And she gets back into the dollhouse, lifts up Stan, puts him back in his seat, which makes me wonder, she's living in the dollhouse. Doesn't she have a bed in there?
Sure.
But she sleeps, snuggles with Stan, the doll, I get that, but in the chair, not in the bed. And then here we have a shrink spurt where she's wakes up half her size, she must be like 6 inches or so at this point. And it's a really terrifying moment that I think they could have extended just a little longer. But I mean, she went to bed a foot tall and wakes up about 6 inches tall. That's a major shrink spurt in the middle of the night that would be terrifying.
Yeah, a little disorienting.
Yeah, and all there is her voiceover narration saying, "When I woke up the next morning, I was shrinking again," instead of like, I don't know, a full-bodied scream.
As much of a body as she has.
Right.
Yeah, her blasé attitude at times is definitely like the most. It's weird. The narrative structure of this film is weird because we're getting a voiceover, but we're never given like any reason or for when or where that voiceover is coming from. It's not like Interview of a Vampire where it's like, let me tell you my tale of the shrunken woman, and we're seeing that play out. Like, we do not know which version of Pat Kramer is telling us this narration, or how reliable she is as a narrator. Like, if this is all coming from somebody who's been through this experience and now she's telling it to us, perhaps her underreaction to this is just her way of retelling the story of herself, if that is how we can interpret the narration.
But it feels like she's doing it like in the present, like almost like 5 minutes in the future, because the way she's talking about it sounds like, and I never thought it would be this bad, but she says it like every time.
Yep.
And so like when things get worse, it's like, well, I didn't see this coming either. You're with me.
Yeah. But no, she takes it in stride, as short a stride as she has now.
Yeah, she's very, very, I don't want to say persistent or stubborn. There's another word for it. She has a lot of like motivation. She has a lot of gumption because she doesn't want to like resolve.
Yep.
Yeah, she's got a lot of that because she refuses to give up on her gender role of caretaker.
And exactly, the next morning she's frying bacon. Okay, you're somewhere between 6 and 9 inches tall. You're determined to still
Did you see how big that
life.
Bacon was?
And that's perhaps the most dangerous thing she could be doing.
Yeah. And as somebody who is 6'3" and has definitely gotten like bacon grease sprayed onto their chest from,
don't cook bacon shirtless. You know better.
It's the fastest way to get rid of the chest hair. I have no further comment on that.
It's good for the skin.
Regardless of the heat of the hot plate that's going on there, this is a dangerous activity just from the sheer matter of cooking this long, somewhat rubbery-looking bacon.
It looked like vinyl, and then it started moving, and I was like, ooh, how'd they do that? But I feel like it was just like a piston in the hot plate. But
there's something, yeah. I looked it up once. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a sheet of vinyl printed out to have the bacon fat strip. But, like, yeah, it's like, that was pretty good. It looked like she was struggling. It was really thin cut. And those kids, are digging the thick cut bacon.
I am kind of like, by the time you get the first 2 or 3 inches of that, yes, as you said, very thin cut bacon onto that hot plate, it will have cooked already.
It is done.
Yeah.
But I think, to get to like the point of the scene, she like one, what's her name? Concepcion?
Concepcion.
Yeah, she's like totally just like flippant and like isn't helping out. She turns the music up. She's dressed up a lot more provocatively, is dancing around the house, and like meanwhile she's trying to cook.
We haven't really talked about the fact that while all of this is happening, all of the neighborhood friends have become extremely famous for knowing the incredible shrinking woman.
Yeah, especially with the show. When she made that cameo on the show, that's when everyone started like co-opting her struggle to be like, oh, I've known her my whole life. And I feel like that's like another like thing they were trying to tell, like their own like another lesson this movie needed to jam in our faces of like, don't co-opt other people's struggles. It's rude.
Yeah. And it's during the like world famous shrinking woman, because and I can't stress enough that there is an aspect of this film that revolves around the fact that she is a celebrity.
Yes.
We get the newscaster turning and looking straight at the camera and going, is Pat Kramer's shrinking away commentary on the reduced place of the housewife in this new modern America and all of its, conveniences. And I'm just looking at him and I'm like, I want to punch you in the face for two reasons. One, you are just blatantly trying to put across the theme of a movie for a movie that clearly doesn't know how to give us its theme subtly. And two, that is the most privileged ass thing you, Mr. Man, could possibly say about a person, a woman trying to raise two children in this house. Okay,
this medical mishap.
Yeah, for the love of God, this is a full-time job she had when she was a full-size person taking care of these kids, let alone as whatever.
It is 1/16 her size.
Yeah, it's a clunky bit of exposition.
It's so ham-fisted.
Yeah.
But yeah, to move it along, she falls into the garbage disposal.
Right.
And Concepcion assumes that when she turns on the garbage disposal that she kills her.
Right.
But
because her shoe is in the sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dramatic irony. Because we've seen her climb out of the drain and try to jump out of the sink, and then it cuts to the door where it's clear someone outside is picking the lock.
Yeah, but I feel like this is the most awkward tone thing ever.
Yes.
Because we've talked a lot about awkward tone. The funeral for the small woman is so insulting to the present small woman. It's written as a joke, but it's also played as a joke, but it has no place to be a joke.
Right.
Because they put the doll shoe in a matchbox, they close it, and it's pouring out rain, of course, black umbrella, black clothes, the whole family's there underneath one umbrella in their backyard with all those tiny little not the hedge fence little things, it's almost like the croquet hoops.
The garden trim.
Yeah, the garden trim. Yeah, those tiny little wire fences that go 6 inches high, and they put her shoe in the box in the backyard and cry about it. And it's you're not gonna put her in a normal sized grave. You're not gonna.
Right.
It's the 80s. You own a cemetery plot somewhere. They
bought them together year 5.
Yeah.
And it is played for a joke because Judith, eulogizing her, says some ridiculous stuff like she was a beautiful and courageous woman who gave so very much and got so little.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And no one will ever fill her shoes, which Vance actually does give her a disapproving look on that one.
Yeah, it's just it's so insensitive. And
Concepcion is bawling her eyes out the whole time.
Because she's a murderer. Because she was shirking her responsibilities.
And the music at the moment, I mean, the soundtrack, it's a funeral dirge version of the song "Little Bar of Soap" that she sings to her kids.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's a really odd scene.
It's I feel like it's absolutely a product of the time. Because I feel like you could play that now, but it'd be so tongue in cheek that's yeah, all right. The movie would already have established that tone throughout, but in this one, it just I almost feel like in any other movie, it'd be a Hitchcock kind of moment where it's oh my God, Concepcion killed her.
Yeah.
And then but no, they're in the backyard crying over a matchbox. And then they move on.
And the one of the newscasters who reports this says that the hope for the shrinking woman is down the drain, which is really just callous. It is. It's just, it does not fit with what they were trying to do in any way whatsoever.
It's I don't know who wrote this. I know it's written down somewhere. I hope they're paying for their sins.
You mean Jane Wagner, Lily Tomlin's wife?
Yep.
But I don't think in the early draft of the script there is she does fall down the drain. That does happen in the original script. But do they have these actually lines? We got the lonely backyard in the rain. That's there. Places the box in a tiny grave. Funeral arrangement of little bar of soap. It is in this earlier draft of the script, but the puns that I just said are not there.
That's definitely Lily Tomlin like ad-libbing at the in the scene probably. Because I don't know if we've made it clear yet or not. Lily Tomlin is a very funny and talented actress.
She is.
Yeah. Who is working with a weird character, honestly. The whole film is weird and the characters in it reflect that. And this funeral scene, I think, is probably the distillation of all of that in one thing.
Right. I think they could have handled this a little differently. I mean, again, the kidnapping within the realm of the script that you've got the Organization for World Management wanting to shrink the world. They need to kidnap her. There's disbelief in there, but I'm more willing to accept that. Why not just have her missing and have the family like, did she fall into a drawer and like look for her instead of this really horrific thing that until we find out that Pat didn't die in the garbage disposal, what's going through Concepcion's head? And that's never explored. It's just kind of brushed aside. She just screams and cries and nothing else.
Yep. Everyone's just there to kind of like almost contextualize how not cool this universe is.
Yeah.
Of course, the entire idea behind the scene, though, is that as we, the audience, knowing that she's been kidnapped,
right,
are supposed to be laughing along with this, and then we finally see her in the hamster cage, basically, in the basement headquarters of the World Management Organization, which, for an organization which I can only presume has like access to great funding, is sort of a slapdash. Like this thing is really poorly organized once you get down into the grit of it.
Oh yeah.
Remember that part where we were saying that they were really cool because it was quiet and like well lit and just really chill, and then you like go down to their lab and then like it's filled with a bunch of screaming animals and we're back.
Yep.
We're just right back.
Yep.
It's either children or animals. Don't work with them and don't listen to them in movies. Jeez.
Now the cage, the hamster cage or whatever creature it is again some great production design. I mean, I believe that Pat's in this.
Yeah, it's absolutely like a hamster cage because it's got the big old wheel.
It's got the water bottle, the little ball in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wakes up and she starts like goes to the bars of the cage, is screaming out there, help, help, and she sees Dr. Ruth, and Dr. Ruth comes and threatens her with a hypodermic needle, saying, "Be quiet, Mrs. Kramer, or we're gonna have to sedate you again." And then later,
You're just gonna impale her.
Right. Nort is reaching into the cage at one point, and you've got Pat running on the hamster wheel, and it's like Nort needs her blood. And I'm like, wait, you've just kidnapped her. She's been sedated. Why didn't you draw her blood then?
Because it was tainted with drugs. Remember, this is the 80s.
Yeah, but there was... it's not like it's difficult to kidnap a 6-inch tall person. They don't need to like drug her. Just put her in like a box and walk away. She's not going anywhere. No one's going to hear her. So they should have her blood by now.
I can't disagree with any of that. I do, however, want to compliment the workmanship on the cage, because this is an instance where I definitely did not say to myself, you could just walk out of there. Like, those bars are very specifically at this time close enough to each other that she cannot just walk out at this time. We do learn later that she shrank again and was capable of doing that. But I do want to say that they do think through that, you're going to need to have them a certain width, or else I'm just standing there. I'm just sitting here going, why doesn't she just turn sideways?
Just having like an Animaniacs moment where like she's like steps outside the cage, is like, get the key for the cage, and she steps back in.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to present an alternate viewpoint of this. No, it actually shows ineptitude on Dr. Nortz and Dr. Ruth because they know she's still shrinking. They should put her in like an emptied out aquarium or terrarium. She cannot get out of that. She will eventually, which she does, shrink small enough to squeeze through the bars of the cage.
That is a valid point. Well, these are also the same people who have decided that Rob is an employee that they want to keep around. Who, yes, we are finally introduced to Mark Blankfield's character of Rob, the I don't know, intern janitor. Like, I don't know even what to call this guy.
Right, and you also, he must be working double, triple shifts or something.
You know he has a master's degree.
But it's a master's degree in like philosophy. It's like not even useful for what he's doing.
They're paying him an experience in bananas.
But he can communicate with Sydney through sign language. Sydney, Rick Baker in the gorilla suit.
Yes. Sydney, a giant gorilla, because it is the 80s, and whether it's Trading Places or any number of other comedies from this time period, we must have a person pretending to be a gorilla in a gorilla suit.
Yep.
For no real reason except, I guess, to put on all of the posters, because if anybody's seen the only posters I'm familiar with the Incredible Shrinking Woman, is a tiny Lily Tomlin riding the back of a very serene looking gorilla.
Yes. And wearing the dress made out of Judith's sleeve.
Oh, yes, it is. And he is also on a skateboard as I look at it more closely.
I'm Googling this now. Hang on.
The weirdest, like, what is the context that I need for this moment?
Yo, what the hell? It's like Curious George got fly.
Yeah, it's an interesting poster, which I think you either look at this poster and say, oh, I need to know more about what's happening here, or you look at this poster and you're like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't know what brought us to this point, but I don't need to know.
Yeah, that gorilla's definitely got not a problem in the world.
Yep.
Oh, I just noticed the bottom of the poster says, read the Jove book, which must be what I've got somewhere. Interesting. Oh, and Jane Wagner was also executive producer.
I have the Jove book. Okay. I have it right here with me. It's actually, it's not a novelization. Well, this one is not a novelization. It's a photo story. And
yes, that is it. That is what I have.
Yep, I have that also. And like the first 2/3 of the book kind of go through the plot. And then the last part has some production photos. Has a bunch of production photos.
Oh, now I really need to track it down.
Do you?
But
all black and white, though. All black and white.
I got to catalog it at some point, so I got to find it. But yes, so we meet Sydney and Rob, the two honestly most interesting characters in the film in many ways, in my opinion. I certainly enjoy the time we get to spend with them. And everybody there is pretty much to the same. Well, Rob isn't until they reveal to him that he's gonna be probably shrunk down.
Right.
That nobody in that lab wants to be there really, and Pat and Sydney make a number of different attempts at escaping.
Yep. Yes, because in the middle of the night, Rob at one point, and okay, so Rob comes to clean up the place, and he's totally behaving like he's drunk.
Yes.
And he knocks over a folder, which again goes to the ineptitude of Dr. Nortz, Dr. Ruth, and everyone else there at the Organization of World Management. It's the top secret folder for their Shrink the World plan.
Page 10.
Yeah, page 10. Page 10.
In a bright pink paper, what you use to put your evil plans on.
Which has the line that they like focus in on. They highlight a line which says that they're going to use Pat Kramer as a guinea pig, which makes me wonder.
What?
Makes me wonder back, how is she a guinea pig if she's already shrinking by this like mythical concoction of stuff? Unless they originally planned to shrink her because Dan's part of their team. So maybe they gave the perfume to Dan to give to Vance to give to Pat, which is what actually shrinks her, in which case Dr. Nortz already has a shrinking serum. I'm confused.
It's the cheese.
Yeah, I think that's whoever wrote that possibly didn't believe what I don't believe Dr. Nortz wrote that. First of all, he's definitely like dictating that to some poor secretary somewhere.
They didn't think of this through at all, and I know that because the scientific paper on top of it all was talking about the chromosomal theory of genetics and heredity, which has literally nothing to do with this.
Right.
I looked it up.
And
not even tangentially. Gregor Mendel grew peas and it had nothing to do with this.
And I'm going to talk about, I want to commend the prop design, the folder, the pencil that she uses to move the cage. It all looks fantastic. And she struggles through the bars of the cage to turn these sheets of paper that are as long as she is. And she moves the cage with this long pencil, using it like as kind of like for leverage.
Like a Venetian oar.
The detail work, you can actually, it looks like someone chewed on the pencil in places. It's got little nicks in it.
Huh.
It's an impressive set piece.
I did notice that, and that was one of those little world building things for me, where I was like, man, somebody like found the most gnawed pencil they could to use as their like reference point for this this prop.
I wonder if the prop department is listed on IMDb.
That's a good question.
But what confuses me more is just the timing of everything, because okay, she's kidnapped in the morning.
Yes. We
know that, and we don't know exactly how much time passes between her being kidnapped and her waking up in the hamster cage. That time is not established, but in the sequence of scenes in the movie, it's already made national, perhaps world news that she's dead, and Vance has buried the matchbox in the backyard. So, and she's reading these pages through the night. Her voiceover narration says that she read it. She was up all night reading it, even though she only gets to page 10. And though I understand that, yes, it takes some time for her to turn the pages, the amount of words on the page aren't any more than they would be if she was normal size. So she was up all night reading 10 pages.
Oh, that sounds like me. Especially if one of those things is a really old, really outdated research article about genetics.
All right, maybe I'll give that. It might take time to process some of it. I'll give her that, having to reread some of it. And then Rob eventually comes back. She shows him the pink page, and Rob allows her to call Vance at work. Vance is now at work. His wife has just died as far as he knows, his wife has just died in this tragic accident. Yesterday. And he's at work with Dan. Secretary comes in and says, there's a woman calling. She claims to be Pat. And Vance says, I hate these crank calls, which means he's been getting them. I'm not sure how much time has passed. And then
no one does.
Pat shrinks a little more, and they put her under the funnel, which again, phenomenal idea, phenomenal execution. The scrap of fabric she's wearing is bigger on her. It's got to be secured with a safety pin across her chest. So that based on the length of a safety pin, if you assume is half an inch, it makes her about 3 inches tall. It looks great. And then it cuts to Vance on this other talk show saying, my wife is alive. And they've got some guy from the Organization of World Management, even though it's later that afternoon, because Pat actually says, by afternoon, I had shrunk small enough to squeeze between the bars of my cage. So all of this is happening in a 24 to 36 hour time span. How did this how did this talk show Vance get on it, and they get a representative from organizational world management so quickly? I mean, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief that Pat Kramer is shrinking, but all this like real world stuff makes no sense.
I will propose this as somebody who actually used to work. I can say this. I used to work for an organization called PR Newswire. So we would send out all the press releases and everything. I can say it's probably not that difficult to imagine that somebody who works in marketing could possibly know, like, hey, you're the sponsor on such and such's show. I need to get a message out to the world as fast as possible. Can you book me on there? Oh, you're the grieving husband of one of the most famous people in the world. All right, yeah, let me see what I can do. That I can, like, okay, if you work really quickly, yeah, maybe you might be able to do it. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of like, well, how long does it take to train on Dagobah versus travel to, this almost get eaten by a worm and then travel to Bespin and then get tortured and, finally have Darth Vader show up. Like, yeah, there's definitely some time dissonance here, no matter how much you want to play with the timelines.
Right.
I didn't even think about that. I was just stuck on the newscaster, like, we need a fair and balanced thing, so we're going to hear both sides. And I'm like, it begins.
Yep. But then Pat's son, who's on the show, finally he's been shooting that ball gun all movie. He finally lands one right on the shady guy, right on his forehead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a nice touch. I have to roll back a little bit. I mean, I realize that Rob's overreaction to the pink page is necessary for the movie to move forward. But did he not stop for one moment and be like, oh, maybe they don't mean the employees? like, wait, I work at the evil organization. It's kind of like saying, I'm part of this bank robbing organization. Oh, wait, what if they rob me? Like,
the leopards eating my face party will eat my face?
I mean, I doubt that he thinks that they probably respect him as a fellow co-worker in that regard.
He is a co-worker on badge only. They treat him like garbage. Yeah. But then again, he does drug the gorilla a lot. So, I mean, it's not unfounded. It's like the only reason you're hired is because it's really hard to fire you. We're not an at-will state.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just one of those things where it's like, what is going on? Like, Rob, you work for these people. Why are you jumping to this conclusion?
Because he knows they're evil.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Golly gee willikers.
He didn't drink the Kool-Aid.
He just kind of pans over. It's like, wait, are we the baddies? Like, oh wait, we've kidnapped a woman. Oh, I love that. Oh yeah, that's right. Because he doesn't think. I do remember now that he has a little bit of a moral out because he has been told that she is actually a clone of the real Pat Kramer and not the actual Pat Kramer kidnapped.
Oh my god. That's why she's so small.
It does bring up another point where it's like, so wait. Where's this cloning technology that you so easily believe that they have? Like, hold on. I have more questions now.
This movie is nothing but questions and eye strain.
Right.
But, so Pat's first escape attempt does not go quite to plan, to the point where we believably think Rob has been killed.
Yes.
And so it takes a second escape attempt with Rob, I don't know, hero of the sewers, like he kind of slinks in this lab coat and then helps her get what she needs to escape, and then as the security camera comes back around, he lifts the lab coat up over his head and pretends to be hanging on a hook of other clothing. It's so odd.
He can't just stand underneath the camera. That would be too smart.
There's a howler monkey underneath it. He doesn't that one doesn't like him. He doesn't give it the drugs.
He's not that monkey's dealer.
No.
And meanwhile, upstairs, you've got John Glover drinking milk again, and a couple other Organization of World Management folks watching the talk show that Vance and their representative are on. And so they just sit in that room and watch talk shows. And and then switch to the security camera and see they're escaping and blare the alarm to alert the people escaping. We know you're escaping.
Yeah, at this point it kind of becomes Mannequin, where all of the security guards are just the most useless at their job. Just
grossly
Keystone
incompetent.
copying it. Yeah,
Yep.
We've mentioned Keystone Cops. This is about as good a comparison as I could possibly give. Just running in and out of things. It's practically Scooby-Doo, like running into one elevator and coming out another elevator, essentially. Like
with a gorilla.
Yeah.
Was there?
Yes, because
was there a skateboard
Sydney.
there?
What's that?
No. I was trying to figure out if the gorilla ever was on a skateboard at any point.
No, I don't think so.
I feel deceived.
Only Pat was.
Yeah, and she was barely on it.
And there was one moment. So the first round of security guards run in. Sydney, Pat, and Rob give them the slip and get back outside the lab area and lock the door, locking them in. And then the second round of security guards show up. I think it's Rob, basically points them back towards they're like, where did they go? And he points towards the other door.
It's not Rob. It's Sydney who points them. So they stumble out of the elevator because Rob threw banana peels everywhere. So they slip out. Sydney's just leaning against the wall between elevators, and one of the cops on the floor says, which way did they go? And he just points one way. It doesn't even register in Silly Cop that he's talking to a gorilla.
Yeah. And then they open fire on the one side of the lab door, and the cops on the other side of the door open fire back, and they bullet hole Swiss cheese this door.
Yep.
But there's no nothing happen. None of those bullets strike anybody. They just sort of get absorbed into the wood, creating holes.
Like plot holes.
Yeah.
And
the door's a metaphor.
This movie is falling apart. There's so much just rolling out of it. And by the way, in case we haven't been clear, Pat has clutched onto the collar that Sydney has, and is basically just along for the ride as Sydney is leaping from elevators to elevators and jumping around trying to get out of the basement lab with Rob. And eventually we find out that it's almost like this is the organization that Chuck Barkowski works for in Chuck, where it's underneath the Orange Julius, where they come up out of the or whatever. I think it's also the mall from Stranger Things, where they come up into this restaurant, this fast food store, and it's in the strip mall where the grocery store from the beginning of the film is.
And there's still the guy shilling Cheese Tease or whatever.
That was
Cheese Tease.
When I say surreal, it absolutely was just I didn't even coherently figure out how they got to the supermarket, and I watched it. It's just and now they're here. And I'm how are they here?
Yep.
I mean, also it very well could be that they came up in Arizona, and thanks to the power of cut, the jump cut, they end up there. There is really no on-screen explanation of how they get there. It is just I'm just sort of filling in the gaps of my own narrative. My brain must make it work.
It's how Bruce Wayne got from the Middle East to Gotham in less than 36 hours with no money.
With no money or papers or identifying. Yeah, don't start me on that.
He just popped into the city. It's the same thing.
Rob and Sydney, they come up through a door in the fast food place. So the lair is indeed there, but it's not before Sydney's on top of one of the elevators, and he lifts up the escape hatch in the top, and there's Dr. Nortz and Dr. Ruth and other people there, and Sydney flips them the bird.
Yes.
And Dr. Nortz and Dr. Ruth follow them through the fast food thing, and it's the fast food place, and it's dislodged shelves of styrofoam trays. That is what ultimately stops Nortz and Ruth.
Yeah. Oh no, not the packing material.
And we spent all our money on sets.
And here's also more of the how much time is passing, because we know that John Glover and company were watching Vance and Judith on the TV show, and now Judith is in the parking lot, and I understand it could have been pre-taped, that's not a problem. But Judith is already in the parking lot with like this big stop consumerism sign. And all this chaos breaks loose, and then the real cops show up, and the security guards see the real cops and kind of back away.
Oh yeah, they get the hell out of there. They are like, oh, the real cops are here.
Yes.
Oh,
the ones
no.
with guns that shoot through wood.
Yeah. All we've got are these tin badges that say totally not evil security. Like, and eventually, I do love that, like, when Rob's trying to get away from them, there is also another, like, American Werewolf in London moment where, like, he sees the real cops and he's like, oh, they'll definitely get me away from the, danger that I'm running from. And he's like, arrest me. And they're like, what for? And he's like, and he like stomps his feet on their feet, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he like assaults a cop.
Yeah. Which is like 5 minutes later, totally forgotten. Like, right. He just kind of walks away at the end of the scene. But eventually, Sydney gets Pat to the Cheese Tease table with the microphone.
Yep, she climbs the microphone cord.
Mm-hmm.
After a whole bunch of shopping carts have crashed together. That's important.
Yes. Oh, yes. All the Blues Brothers scene, but with shopping carts.
Yep.
Has occurred, yes, with all of the chemical byproduct spread along the sidewalk nearby.
Yep. Okay. And so Pat gets up to the microphone, and there's all this chaos, and she's like, 3 inches tall at this point, so she's heard by the microphone, and her voice stops the chaos because, of course, everyone assumed she had passed, so everyone's intrigued. But I just want to talk a little thematically at this point, because this is a moment where Pat Kramer actually gets some agency. Everyone is listening to her. Throughout this whole movie, she's been shut up.
She's been told what to do and what to get.
She's been told what to do. She's been silenced. I'm going all the way back to, Dan saying, don't blow the whistle on this stuff, when she's on the Mike Douglas show and Mike Douglas asks her, hey, what's it been like? And she said, oh, it's been a nightmare, but some good things have come out of it, like getting to come on your show and all. No one cared what I had to say when I was my normal size. And Mike Douglas cuts to commercial at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's many times in this movie that she's just been silenced, that other people have pretty much just said, stop it, Pat, not your turn to talk. But this is her moment to talk.
And people stop and listen.
Yes.
As she says, I don't need to tell you what's wrong with this country. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Apparently exactly. They're not getting it because they're all here eating cheese teas or whatever.
Right. We've of all of the films that we've reviewed on the podcast, the transformation theme is something that should, help move the story or the theme, either literally or figuratively. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there are a lot of films that we've watched where the transformation is just for plot purposes. Like the symbolism has not been fully used or refined or realized. And I'll argue that a lot of that hasn't also happened in this film, but it is the most that I've seen of what we've looked at where the transformation is trying to be both figurative and literal in what the movie is trying to tell us.
Right.
I don't think it does it especially competently all the time, but this is where we do, as you said, like nobody paid attention to me when I was full size, and now they do.
Right.
And we finally get her little speech here.
Because she's a novelty.
Perhaps.
It's not on the merit of her character, it's the fact that she's small.
But her husband gets there because Judith, when she hears Pat on the microphone, says, someone call her husband. Now, this is pre-cell phone, so I don't know how they contact Vance. But
from the manager's office.
Yes. Because apparently the TV show was filmed in this strip mall too.
Everything.
You gotta fill those spaces. There's real estate. You gotta put somebody in there.
Zoning was loving it.
And She says she's shrinking fast. She doesn't have much time. And this is the first time we actually see her shrink, as opposed to it's happened and we see the result. This is
the on-screen process is this moment.
And again, it makes me curious, perhaps me overthinking as a size writer, why is it a spurt here other than plot convenience?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I could say that, she's surrounded by cheese teas, and that's definitely got to have some, like, banned greenhouse, like, gases, like, leaking from it all the time. Like,
it's filled with CFCs.
Yeah.
Just stick that cheese teas in,
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, no, don't get it all over you.
Nope. Really open your mouth wide.
You got more on you than in you.
So that I'm sticking with my, her shrinking is affected by, what additional chemical she comes into contact with as the movie goes on. And she is in chemical contact ground zero here. This is the 1981 of chemicals.
All you need is, what's that acid rain from, the zombie movie?
Oh, from, no, hold on.
Night of the Living Dead?
Night of the Living Dead is the original, and then it's Day of the Living. Nope. Night of the Living Dead Part 2.
Yeah. Either way, whatever that, like, TX83, whatever that's called, that compound, that's the only way it could be worse. Or, like, a single rod of plutonium.
It's just, in with the pickled eggs. So yeah, we see her in this like little scrap of fabric shrink down into it, like just get smaller and smaller, and the material kind of collapses down behind her, and she's definitely very cool with what is happening to her.
Yeah, she definitely went through the 5 stages very quick.
Well, I mean, she stopped Organization of World Management from their Shrink the World plan because Rob has the pink page.
Yeah, that's going to hold up in court.
Yeah. She even tells Rob, look out for the page 10. And, Rob, take care of page 10. And Sydney, you take care of Rob.
Mm-hmm. And let me be very clear. I want a sequel that's just Sydney and Rob. Like, the 20 minutes that we are given these characters who have established history, like, a unique form of communication because they both know sign language. Like,
that's a buddy cop movie that would have just begged to be made.
But they go their separate ways. I mean, okay, so Pat shrinks away. Her little swatch of fabric lands in the spilled chemicals from the shopping carts that crash.
Dip.
And little bar of soap funeral dirge plays again. And they're going to ring the bells everywhere at midnight as a vigil for Pat Kramer. And and Rob is watching it from some bar with the members of the Pat Kramer fan club, the little people who were there at the Mike Douglas show. Meanwhile, Sydney, as we will come to learn, is at the Kramer residence.
Yeah, just chilling out.
And I don't know if we specifically mentioned it, but little bar of soap we see early in the movie is like Pat's little dance and song number that she does to help the children go to sleep. And it's a cute little ditty.
Yeah, she wishes she was a little bar of soap, and then she became anything but a bar of soap.
It recurs because, I mean, there's one night when she's about doorknob height. She goes into the bedroom, but Concepcion is there putting the kids to bed, and she sings Little Bar of Soap in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And then we actually see Pat standing on a bar of soap when she's railing at Vance about not wanting to become a product, and Vance has the line, when you come down off your soapbox, we'll talk.
Yeah. And of course we cut back to her reaction of looking down and realizing she's literally on a box of soap.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just this theme this bit of music that goes through it, because this movie has only 2 musical themes: Little Bar of Soap or Galaxy Glue. Like, those are our 2 choices for musical numbers. The the entire soundtrack of this film fit on a 45. Like that was my.
There's one more piece of music. Mike Douglas sings "Little Things Mean a Lot."
That's right, he does.
That's true. Yep. Because nothing about this movie is subtle.
Right, exactly.
I've heard of nuance. I laid dead as it drove by. On page 11.
Pat, you wanted some shiny nuance here.
Sorry, I was busy chewing on this oversized pencil.
With Cheese Tease.
It's the leaning tower of Cheese Tease.
God.
So, I had to do it. So they have this giant worldwide funeral wake essentially for her, and as the camera is kind of panning across all of these people standing outside with their candles, we see a lone cop car slowly drive up.
Yep.
Through the other cop cars.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And we join Vance and the children and Concepcion again inside the house, and the police show up with a surprise.
Yep. Here's
No
Pat.
warrant. Oh.
It's Pat.
At this point in the film, let me just say, so it's revealed she's alive. Of course, we can all make the presumption that it was the chemical. I think she even says it, like it was the chemical bath again.
And we do see when, after her swatch of fabric lands in the chemicals, you do see something kind of swirling around, moving in there.
Yeah,
yes.
like a nematode and some gack.
Mm-hmm.
Something really small, which is assumed to be Pat.
Yeah. I have to say, if I was the public at this point, because shortly after she reveals herself to the family, like they open the door and they're like, "Look, it's Pat." Like, by this point, as the public, I would be like, "How many times is this woman going to die?"
That's immediately what I thought, where it's like they're not crying nearly as hard because it's like, well, I guess she's just dead again. Like, you know, hope dashed, hope again.
Well, the bigger question is, okay, so sometime earlier in the day was the, again, I'm not sure how much time has passed. Is this vigil happening exactly at that midnight?
Okay, around the world. 6 hours.
I mean, the incredible shrinking woman has died. This is a national holiday at this point. Like,
yeah.
It's a day of mourning.
But between her being microscopic in the puddle of chemicals and being her original size again at home,
5'7",
her original size, has been several hours. She had to have gone through all the other sizes. Why wait until she's a big size to come home?
How long was she like sitting out front of a grocery store naked before it was just kind of like, oh, hey, it's Pat?
Yeah.
Especially because like at that rate, if it's like, let's say it's in the afternoon, why not? We can just pick
3 p.m.
She's 5'7", from no inches to, let's see here, that would be 67 inches.
Yep.
That's a bit of time to for 9 hours.
9 hours, that's 7+ inches an hour.
64 divided by 9. Nope. I got 8 times 8. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, 7-8 inches an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty quick. Even my little dinosaurs I drop in the water don't get that big that quick.
Right. And I mean, the plot of this movie has lasted several months. I mean, we had Christmas at one point in the middle of the movie, although time is...
Seasons are irrelevant in California.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And early in the movie, when she was starting shrinking it, the bathrobe standing against the wall scene is about an inch a day, we'll say. So if you go at that rate, we're talking this is over a couple months.
She would have been growing inches taller while they were talking.
Yes.
Like in the car, she would have gotten at least like half a foot taller.
Right.
But it don't work like that though.
And that's all assuming that she started growing immediately upon ingesting the chemical spill. What if that didn't start until a couple hours later? In which case, she's growing like a foot an hour.
Yeah, see, what you're not considering here is that the reason she's with the police is because they were responding to a break-in alarm at the grocery store because she had smashed in the window, desperate to help fill the caloric need of growing that quickly. And they picked her up just gorging on like artichokes and apples and things, just like raw bacon just shoved out her mouth for they could power through this.
And because she was naked.
Oh yeah, she had to dress herself in whatever she could, potato sacks and all that.
Yeah,
I don't know if she'd eat bacon, Dan, after that experience with the griddle.
That's true. Yeah, but they show up and she's like Gollum style, just like gnawing on a fish. Like
that's a movie I want to see.
She's gnawing on Cheese Tease.
Yeah,
just biting into the side of the can.
Because that's the only thing I can imagine is like the caloric needs of shrinking, you could say, are the minimum at best. You could argue in that science, but like that fast of growth has got to require building blocks. Like she's got to be getting that material from something.
Well, they didn't talk about where the material went when she shrank.
Right.
So maybe it just got really dense.
Alex, just be glad that we don't have smell-o-vision, okay? There's one long flatulence.
I was gonna say there was one series. I'm trying to remember what series it was where like they basically like said it's like you just give it off in the air. Like it's released as oxygen, and when you need to grow, you absorb the oxygen.
You sublimate it out or what have you.
Yeah, but I feel like if we dig. For once, I'm going to just take a stand here and be like, let's not talk about where the mass went.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to think about it.
Don't anamorphs us here where it's this alternate dimension sort of thing. It's just gone.
And as a writer of stories where people shrink, there's most of the time I don't. Sometimes I do bring up, hey, all right, here's what we think it is, but it's just kind of glossed over to make it sound all technobabble, and then just accept that she's shrinking.
That's good science fiction. Where just like tachyon waves, whatever, moving on.
Yep. I like to think of it where it's like when you write a death scene, you don't add in the part where the body defecates, to ruin the moment. Like I'm not writing how she's having the weirdest poops as she gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Like
right, spend 5 minutes of narrative time talking about death rattles.
Right, It never showed on the TV show 24 Jack Bauer taking a piss, but he must in the 24-hour time span.
Yes.
There's a great bit. I'm one of the few people who watched that like extra season of Scrubs where it was like Scrubs like the
2.0.
2.0, yeah, whatever it was. And there's a bit where not James Franco, what's his brother's name? His younger brother. The young Franco the younger.
Is it Dave?
Yes, Dave Franco.
Dave
Franco's character is standing and he's got to do a thing and he's not allowed to move, and they keep coming back to him and they're like, haven't you peed? And he's like, well, I'm letting it out little by little and letting it dry. And like that's what I imagined that Jack Bauer the entire time is like. Any scene you see Jack Bauer like talking to somebody, he's letting out just a little bit of pee.
But you can't do that because then the birds of prey can follow you.
Or maybe Jack Bauer pees when most normal people do during the commercial breaks because we don't see what's happening in the show then.
That's true. It's not actually 24 hours.
Yeah, it's half an hour.
Boop, boop, boop.
Take that.
Anywho, so Pat's back.
Yep.
Full-ish size. And they reveal her to the public, and the entire world, I guess, is like, oh, all right, well, shut it down. By the way, is it a joke? They pan through the news station, and you see all of the
different nationalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see all the different cities of the world as they pan across Moscow, Paris, London, and then it gets to Burbank, and I wasn't sure if that was a joke of Burbank seeing itself as
a capital,
as everything else, yeah, or we're just in Burbank, and because I thought we were someplace else, but maybe we're just in Burbank. But that did make me think for a moment: is this a joke about Burbank's like self-importance?
Well, the TV studio might be in Burbank.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
might.
But like you.
Anywho, so yeah, they reveal that Pat's fine. They go into the house and they reveal that Sydney's living with them now.
Yep. And Dan asks to be arrested, and
oh yeah, and Dan gets himself arrested, and Cy, do you want to sign us off here
I
in
get to wrap.
these last few moments?
All right. So the wedding band that had fallen off in the car earlier in the movie, Vance wants to put it back on Pat's finger. She's happy to accept it, except it won't get past her knuckle, and that is odd. And then she can hear some sort of fabric starting to tear, and she looks down at her foot, which is outgrowing her sneaker. And then it cuts to her face where there's a smile, back to her foot bursting through that sneaker, and it looks like we've got a slingshot or boomerang kind of ending, that there may be a sequel that never comes, The Incredible Growing Woman.
It is a very good effect. Like,
yes,
of all of our like singular moments of actually seeing a transformation happening, the destruction of the shoe as her foot grows is done very well.
That's
like,
the
even
common
in the
way I've
Folly
seen
work
it done is like when they just take something small and they just like someone off camera just pulls on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a pretty like solid effect.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how they did it when she was standing up on the line and then like things started getting looser, and I'm like, well, you can't have someone like pulling the clothes toward her. So like, how would you unbunch it so it looks like it's loosening up?
Right. The piece of fabric at the end, how that looked looser.
Like no, like wasn't there a time when like she literally like got lower and like her sleeves got baggier on her?
No, I think she's already wearing it and then just lets her, like with the bathrobe, she has her arms folded across her chest, and then she just lets it hang by her side, and the full length of the sleeve drops down.
Gotcha. Dang.
Yeah.
The tearing is good.
Yeah. And credits roll and the full Galaxy Blue song rolls.
Yep.
And that is the end of the movie.
Yay!
So I have a question for you. When I first put on the video to make sure that my DVD had digitized properly, and I think I mentioned this to Fort when I was connecting him to it, this film has a very Vaseline-y look at the beginning in particular. Like there's this weird soft focus that sort of travels through it. Is that just my copy, or do you know
I
what
think
I'm
that's
talking
on
about?
my copy too. That's
Okay.
definitely at the beginning.
Okay, so they didn't clean the lens. Got it.
It's Cheese Tease.
Yeah,
it's always Cheese Tease
on it. Yes, you got more on the lens than in your mouth.
Wow, that the opening scene now just becomes even more relevant to what they're trying to tease with Cheese Tease. But yeah, that's The Incredible Shrinking Woman. I'm so like 50-50 split on recommending it or not, because every part of it that's size related is fantastic.
Yes.
But the film is such a blow to the senses at times that I don't know. Like I'm still undecided.
Yeah, it's, again, I mean, I was 11 years old when I first saw it, and it was the size aspect of it that drew me in, because even though the subtext is in no way nuanced, 11-year-old me did not understand a lot of that. It was just like, oh wow, look at how big everything looks to her. Oh my, she's in the garbage disposal. I mean, the funeral that happens after, and Concepcion's reactions, it's not processing in 11-year-old me. Concepcion should be horrified. This funeral scene is like really just poor. Ugh, it's gross. It was all just the gripping adventure nature of the time. Even like when she climbs onto the bed, 11-year-old me is not, oh, she's going to have sex with her husband. It's like, mom and dad sleep together, so this is normal. She's trying to be normal. That's how, but it's the struggle of getting on the bed, and that's exciting. So like, again, all the size stuff, fantastic. But what's it about? I don't know.
It's a poor vehicle for an interesting idea, and its social commentary is absolutely like just riddled with I want to say naivety, It like it reeks of an immature, like incomplete question of like they could explore so many things so much more. They could take any one of these little bits and really dig in and make something meaningful. But they didn't. And they just like, what if she just got small? What are the implications of that? Well, we got to market this for as many people as we can. So it's kind of a kids movie, kind of a grown-up movie. It's colorful, it's animated. There's lots of things going on. Kids love that. There's toys and jingles and all that stuff. You know, it's a commentary on consumerism while also being consumerist. And then you got the adult part where there's like the risqueness, there's, you know, branding and like money and like dealing with doctors, but like money isn't real. They just talk about money, but like nothing really changes. It's not like they sell stuff in their house. They still keep a day made. Like I don't understand like I guess this is back before, you know, medical costs inflated tremendously. But I guess I don't like it as a vehicle for what it wanted to do because it basically looked like a Matchbox car thrown together by 3 kids who can't do it, who just like don't have the skills. And it's like it's got wheels, it's got paint, it doesn't roll great, it doesn't really carry anything. It's not going to win the Derby, but it exists and it's something to look at. And so like I feel like there are better examples of getting your size content if you want to see, you know, a good production of like size done. Sure. Because like there's like I looked it up, there's like 8 set people. There were like 8 designers and like 1 lead. And like that's quite a bit of work for 8 people to do, like, you know, big kitchen, small kitchen, make it match. You know,
not only that, there's like different sizes of there's normal kitchen, there's twice as size kitchen when she's making dinner that night, and there's kitchen counter when she's with the bacon. I mean, they all look consistent.
Yep, and the rest I think is camera tricks. And so like I would take this like you can look up clips and get your educational pieces out of it, but do yourself a favor and don't actually endure this if you have a lot of trouble with a lot of stimulus, because it is overwhelming. And like you've seen, we spent 3 hours punching holes in this bad boy. Like it's, I don't think I can recommend it, but I will say it has little gems and nuggets that make it like almost a cultural touchstone, but it's more like a bookmark that got left in a library somewhere. Someone's going to find it and they're going to look at it and they go, oh yeah, I remember that. And then like, cool. like they could have delved into like, you know, survivorship problems, you know, how to deal with like medical trauma with your relatives, like, you know, what to do with you're going to lose your partner because like she is going to keep shrinking forever, maybe. Right. Or like dealing with like how society treats people who are different as like, this is something that's marketable, but also should be like, you know, pity porn. You know, like look at how she can't do things on her own. Oh, look how good we are for helping her. Like they don't do any of that. Like they like say it once and they're like, cool, we said it, and they push it to the side. And so this bag of marbles of all these interesting ideas, and then someone throws it on the floor and puts someone in a gorilla suit and like just makes a mockery. I wish I liked it more. The last time I saw this was like 10 years ago. Like my late stepmother loved this movie to death. And so we watched it one movie night and I was like, size, interesting. Wasn't expecting that. And then, yeah, I completely forgot it existed until you brought it up. And then I watched it again and I'm like, I don't remember any of this movie except for the ring scene and the cheese whiz. Like that's all I remembered. Like that's all that stuck. I did not remember anything else about it. And so like I almost saw it with basically fresh eyes. And it was rough.
You know, I'm looking at like Jane Wagner, Lily Tomlin, and Joel Schumacher, all talented people, all people who certainly have a perspective different, given who they are, perspectives that I'm sure could critique, American culture, given, how people like them would be treated
exactly
in American culture. And so I am perplexed by the jaggedness of the commentary that this movie is making. Not that what it's trying to say doesn't have, in some ways, a place to be said, but just the awkwardness of it. And I'm on the IMDb page and I'm scrolled down and there's a bit here about all of the different deleted alternate scenes that show up in the TV versions that aren't part of the distribution version. And I'm just wondering just how much maybe some studio executive came in and, just ripped apart the movie to either take out things that they didn't like or to bring it down to a certain runtime. Like it does seem to me odd that it's that the commentary seems to be so amateurly formed in it that I'm just going to presume that there's some meddling that went on beyond Schumacher and Tomlin's and Wagner's control, because I do expect that they would have something to say about this subject matter, and that for reasons like that, the sleeve, like these details that do run through what we get in this final version, and the hints that were edited out, I can only presume that maybe if there hadn't been some sort of meddling, and I am totally making presumptions about that, maybe we'd have a different, smoother film. But yeah, just with what we have to work with, I would say if you can stream it somewhere, sit down with your thumb on the mute button and
put on some colorblind glasses.
When you feel like you're getting there's a little much, go ahead and hit that mute, keep watching, and when you start to see some of the size stuff come into play, unmute it and keep watching, because there's stuff worth watching in here. It just you just got to sit through a little bit to get to it. So I wouldn't recommend anybody really to pick it up for a personal collection. There are others that do good stuff like this. The stuff that this does, it does really, really well. And I think people should check it out. You just got to be prepared to self-medicate yourself at certain times with that mute button.
Yeah.
In regards to it,
I have to agree. I think that somebody meddled. I absolutely agree that someone came in and they made creative decisions, and undermined a lot of the ideas that wanted to get done.
Right.
And I feel like it became victim of one of its own principles. Because remember the bit where the boss is talking to the husband in the on the set, or in the green room of the talk show, and he's like, "You can't tell them the truth. Do you really want to undermine people's belief in consumerism? Do you have the stones to ruin people's ideas about what they want?" And I feel like somebody watched that and they took personal offense because they said that to another human being at some point, and were just gut it, make it for kids, make it unintelligible and stupid. I will not stand for this insult to my own character.
The earlier draft of the script that I have, there actually is a short scene where Pat and Vance they're in the waiting room of a sex therapist. And I mean, that would be something interesting. Okay, now I'm trying to find out how. So this is shortly after the supermarket scene. So that puts her probably around between 3 and 4 feet tall. And so, I mean, here's an interesting idea. Here's this couple that's dealing with the wife dealing with this bizarre affliction, and how is it affecting their marriage? They go to a sex therapist. That's much more interesting.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that there may have been some meddling going on, because that may not have been that's definitely not as family friendly, and may not have been as comfortable to some of the producers trying to make this into a money-making movie.
Yeah. I think they tried to enterprise it too far, and in the process sabotaged it, which happens a lot.
Right.
And I feel like they would learn their lesson, but it's 40 years later and we're still seeing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have the list here of the top grossing movies of 1981, and it comes in at number 33.
What's the number one?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay, yeah, not a contest. Number two?
Superman 2.
Oh.
And number 3 is Lily Tomlin, 9 to 5.
Okay.
Which was released literally about a month earlier. And then Stripes, Arthur, The Cannonball Run, For Your Eyes Only, The Fox and the Hound, The Four Seasons, and Cheech and Chong's Nice Dreams of the top 10. Yes, this was a
great year.
And
pinnacle.
Also, American Werewolf in London was number 15 that year.
Oh.
Yep.
Wow. Quite a year.
Time Bandits at 13.
I liked Time Bandits.
Time Bandits is a lot of fun.
Time Bandits is good, yeah.
That was. I'd rather have watched that.
I'm sorry I put this upon you.
No, don't you dare apologize.
No.
This is the price that we pay for the work that we do. Every creative outlet must take its toll.
Sorry, not sorry then.
There you go. Yeah.
I could say that I would not complain if I was asked to watch this film again. I think there's a lot of stuff that is enjoyable and can be gotten from it, probably, on a second watch through. And so I can only give it the compliment of saying I would not complain were I to have to watch this again. There are certainly films that we have watched that I will gladly complain about watched once.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I'm looking so this is it's not a bad film. Is it an incompetent film at times? Yes. But is it a very competent film at other times? Also yes. So
yes.
You got to take that as you will in regards to a recommendation, I would say.
I think you should slap that quote on the box.
And as a size enthusiast, I mean this is something mainstream, it's throughout the movie. It's even though a lot of the process is off screen, it progresses throughout the entire film. So it's put all those three together. Well, put however many there were. Put all those things together. It's if you're going to be a size completist, this is one that kind of has to be there.
Oh yeah. No, I mean if you're doing a shrinking movie collection, you'd have to include it. There's no way around it. I would say if you're casually putting a collection together, it may not be, and it's definitely on that border of must have or stream it if you can find it.
Right.
But yeah, if you're a Transformation fan, you've got to have this, and you've got to have a mute button. There's just no way around it.
I have the fast forward button.
There you go.
Let's get to all the sizey-wisey scenes,
Yeah, I feel like YouTube's going to be much better than actually watching it. Not to be rude, but I don't think that's anything you really need to see the whole thing of. This is not a 5-course meal. This is literally like a bag of chips, and you don't have to eat them all.
Right. I will agree to that.
Yeah. Also put that one on the box.
And put some cheese teas on the chips.
God damn it. I love that's it. As it began, so it shall end. The Alpha and the Omega, the cheese tease.
Cheese tease is all.
So,
well,
do we want to move on to the next part?
Yes. So, Cy, as you mentioned earlier, you are a bit of a writer. I actually have Short Time and Desperate Measures physically. I have the printed copies.
Oh, wow.
Which I think I got off of Amazon. I did not pick them up at SizeCon. I actually ordered them. And I hope that you're going to have the time to produce your other book on Amazon, How the Chips May Fall, physically. I just enjoy owning them physically.
I did have, back before Amazon's self-publishing, when their paperback branch, Create Space, was a separate thing, and you could actually make the paperback but not put it up for sale anywhere. For a previous SizeCon, I made ran a limited edition How the Chips May Fall and had it on sale at SizeCon a couple years, and then the switch happened, so I just haven't gotten around to uploading that copy again to Amazon, because it didn't go with the transition when CreateSpace was absorbed into Kindle Direct Publishing. So that is something that will eventually happen, and I'm hoping in 2021 to take a story that I had written many years ago and get that one kind of refurbished and out there. Hoping.
Cool. Well, at the rate that we were publishing these, you may have actually completed it by the time this episode comes out. Given that, any other projects or things you'd like to promote for yourself? I've
got. You can find me on Amazon, Syrus Durham. Those 3 books that were just mentioned. My DeviantArt page has a bunch of short stories, not just Shrinking or Shrunken Woman. Through a cool writing contest that you and I have both participated in, Dan. I've got some shorts that feature giant people and shrunken men as well. And I've also written some comic strips over for Shrink Fan, one of the brands of interweb comics. And I actually will eventually, because the first issue is completed. It's just not advertised yet, but it might be out. It might be out by the time this gets revealed.
Published is a fine term.
I'm exploring the idea of actually real world living with a shrunken affliction, where a young wife, late 20s, comes down with terminal cancer, and a miracle cure that would shrink cancer cells kind of backfires and leaves her 35 inches tall. And how she and her husband are coping with that. Really wanted to make a slice of life comic without kidnapping and Keystone Cops. So that the first issue is done. I can see it. It's just not advertised on their site yet. So, and I've already scripted the next 4 parts of this that I hope they will ultimately pick up as well.
Very cool. Very exciting. Yeah. And for those who would like to search for you on Amazon, your name is spelled Syrus?
Correct.
Durham.
Syrus Durham. That is correct.
Yeah. So I highly recommend people check out your work.
Yeah, I appreciate you spelling it, because I know if I had to try to do it phonetically, I would not have picked an S and I would not have put an H in.
Well, there you go.
The first novel on their short time is a slowly shrinking woman throughout the whole book. She's shrinking at a rate of 2.5 inches an hour. And it's kind of a murder mystery, because she works on a scientific team trying to on a project on reducing organic matter, and when she's putting the specimen that they intend to shrink in the shrinking chamber, she's locked in and it activates, and it may not have been an accident. So it's kind of a murder mystery in there also, kind of a combination of Incredible Shrinking Woman and there was a movie called DOA where the protagonist is slowly dying of a poison but doesn't know who did it. So
I do love a good whodunit.
That actually reminds me, has anyone actually read the book that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based on, Who Censored Roger Rabbit?
No. There's a book?
There is a book. It is. So here's the conceit in Who Censored Roger Rabbit. Toons aren't immortal and unkillable. Toons have the ability to create doppelgangers of themselves. And when you see a toon get splatted or shot or whatever, it is the doppelganger that gets splatted or shot. And they're a complete duplicate, except they just kind of fade away and disintegrate.
Prestige!
Yes. But the plot is that Roger Rabbit is being lazy in his apartment and creates a doppelganger of himself to go down the street and pick up something at the store. And when the doppelganger gets back, he finds that Roger's been murdered. And so he hires Eddie Valiant to solve the murder so that he will at least know who killed his originator before the doppel disintegrates away.
Whoa. That's way different.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is that idea of like somebody trying to solve their own murder before, something happens. Who Censored Roger Rabbit is a wild book. If you think you will know it because you've seen the movie, you do not know it. So trust me.
Wow.
That sounds way interesting. I might actually have to read a book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now that we've done kind of our little stint on guests, I actually have to read The Island of Dr. Moreau. So I've run out of stalling abilities here. But just anything else of your work?
No, that is it currently.
If you're curious, all of my comics on the Patreon are slowly getting to the SizeCon influenced portions of themselves. Yes, I have my Time and Again series, which is actually kind of slowly wrapping up its current chapter, but we've got a bit of a shrunken cat person and devil woman who's just shown up in the pages. And if once I free up the production space again, there's also going to be a shrinking sequence in Dee Dee the Diligent Djinn comic that I've got running. So if you are interested in any of my transformation comics and we want to see some size stuff that's finally coming to the Patreon, my Patreon is patreon.com/DSRedux, DSREDUX, because I had a different marketing idea in mind when I came up with my Patreon and didn't just do patreon.com/danstanding like I should have. But the link is what it is.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. How about yourself there, Mr. Fort?
I'm not a marketing person. I don't really do marketable things. I think the biggest news I've got now is that I got a really cool cosplay in, and I'm going to hopefully get all the pieces together so I can take really cool photo shoots and then just look good. Other than that, just working on little crafts and stuff while it's cold. Which by the time this comes out, it should be pretty warm. So just know that while this was done, I'm not allowed to spray paint things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will that eventually show up on your Instagram?
It will. The Instagram whose is called. I know my Instagram. Just a moment. The Fort is real.
I don't know. Fort. Okay. What is it again? When I'm not talking over you.
The Fort is real. It's also my Twitter handle. I'm not on Twitter nearly as much, mostly for my mental health. But Instagram is where I post all the fun things that I do, like painting and occasional voice acting gigs and photography and art and food and cats.
Of course, it has to be cats. Yeah.
I love my cats. They're beautiful.
Okay. I don't remember what my Instagram handle is. So
Isn't it just Dan Standing UFC or something like that?
It would be, if that is the case, it would be Dan_standing_SFC.
That's it.
Because that stood for Sexy Fantasy Comics. So that was, when I had the gall to run my own self-hosted membership website, that was sexyfantasycomics.com. And I gotta say, until Patreon just completely flat out bans adult creators, if you've never had to have the stress of running your own membership website, running the money charging, managing the logins, updating it yourself, hoping to God the security that GoDaddy provides is secure, you'll never understand just how, like, oh yeah, Patreon, you're being a little bit of a dick about your terms of service now for adult creators. Still easier than, it's still a better experience for me than doing all the things I did before.
Right.
So, well, I think we've done what we came to do.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we absolutely nailed it.
And thank you for having me. This has been absolutely loads of fun. And it was great chatting with the two of you about this for as long as we did.
Yeah, it's actually a long one.
Yeah, this is a longer episode. I know because Amber has messaged me going, where are you at with this right now? So,
yeah.
Because, we've run about an hour longer than we normally do. But thanks for joining the episode today. Thanks for all your hard work at SizeCon. Again, that is why we know each other, right?
Yes.
All of us here today. So,
Mm-hmm.
Great work on that. And thanks for bringing us a movie that was interesting to talk about. It could be a good film and boring to talk about, but it's an imperfect film and exciting to talk about. So that can make a big difference.
That's true.
It's really about the duality of man.
So, on that note of the co-host duos, I have been Dan Standing.
I have been Alex Fort.
And I'm special guest Syrus Durham.
Yes.
And thanks for listening to ModMeta. Have a good night.
Take care.
Yep, good night.
And stop my recording.
And we go to music. And I pick something randomly to go as the end stinger. And yeah, I'm done meandering my talking now.
Saving before anything gets weird and funky.
Yes, please save.